to lead us at this point.
Thank you, Mayor. Please join me in a moment of silent reflection. And now, if you'll join me to say the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. We didn't have our American flag up like they sometimes put up for us for that. Kristen Rush, if you'll do the roll call.
Mayor Williams.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller.
Here.
Councilmember Pfeiffer.
Here.
Councilmember Ford.
Here.
Councilmember Jones.
Here.
Councilmember Marriott.
Here.
Councilmember Simpson.
Here.
Very good. We'll move on to the approval of the minutes from March 1st, 2021. If anybody has any changes or corrections, please indicate. Not seeing any, they will stand approved as presented. We have no recognitions or communications tonight. We have no presentations tonight. Kristen Rush, do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
We do not.
Thank you. Okay, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 7 items on the consent agenda. The first is a resolution authorizing an agreement between Arvada and SEMA Construction for construction manager general contractor services on construction package 1 West 72nd Avenue from Kipling Street to Sim Street in the amount of $1,371,000 approximately. The second one is a resolution authorizing an agreement between Arvada and Rocksol Consulting Group in the amount of approximately $371,000 for engineering design services for the Alkire Street Trail from 78th Avenue to 80th Avenue. Third one's a resolution authorizing an employment agreement between the City of Arvada and Christopher K. Daly as relief municipal court judge. Next one's a resolution authorizing an employment agreement between Arvada and Michael S. Matassa as a relief municipal judge. Next one's a resolution authorizing an employment agreement between the City of Arvada and Miller Leonard as a relief municipal court judge. Next one's a resolution authorizing an employment agreement between the City of Arvada and Ralph C. Tornado as a relief municipal court judge. And the final one, which is very apropos for tonight, is a resolution authorizing the issuance of a purchase order in the amount of approximately $285,000 to Transwest Truck Trailer RV for the purchase of a snowplow truck. Do I have a motion approving the consent agenda? Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that resolutions R21-043 through R21-049 all be approved.
Thank you. Ms. Miller, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Marriott?
Yes.
Ms. Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor votes aye as well. That passes unanimously. Thank you.
Mayor Williams, can I interrupt for just one moment? I'm sorry, there is one person for public comment, Daniel Mondragon.
Mr. Mondragon, sorry, we skipped over you.
Hello.
Mr. Mondragon, it's showing 3 hours, but you're limited to 3 minutes. How are you tonight, sir?
Oh, I could go for 3 hours. No, I won't go for 3 hours. Very good. Am I visible?
Yes, you are.
Okay, very good. Thank you. Just a couple of quick words of thank you to you all. First of all, I am so grateful to have received in the mail my information about signing up for trash hauling. The next morning after I received it, I dropped it off in the mailbox there at the post office by City Hall. And so am very grateful and excited for this new opportunity for citizens of Arvada to have excellent service for their trash hauling and to save money. I know it's going to save me. And I really appreciate the different levels of the bins as someone who's been dedicated to recycling for quite a while. I really appreciate having the large bin for recycling, and I will say I am choosing level 1 with the smallest trash. That will suit my needs just fine. And so thank you for that. I also wish to say thank you for again, for the work that you all have done with the internal DEI committee and Mark Devon on the creation of a DEI task force, community involved task force, and looking forward to seeing how that rolls out. Last week, I had the opportunity to be able to watch on Denver 7, a program that they hosted and put on without commercials on implicit bias. Dr. Brian T. Marks, PhD from Morehouse College, gave an excellent presentation about implicit bias and really leaned in on identifying that the bias can come more often not from learned prejudice, but from stereotypes that we are inundated with for year in and year out. And so within a system like the city of Arvada, even if a certain percentage of individuals consciously or subconsciously hold a bias because of all of the input that's conveyed about particular racial groups, then it can become an important matter to work against those stereotypes, those learnings, to be able to chart a new path forward to honor everyone in the community. So I look forward to the task force being a part of helping that happen. You know, personally, there's times that I experience being in social settings or different places, and being surprised that oftentimes people don't ask me, where do you work? What do you do? Where'd you go to college? It's rare that questions like that are asked of me. And in the back of my mind, I just wonder, as do I think a lot of people, definitely of color, going, do they see me as only someone who perhaps is a janitor or holds certain types of jobs? And so those implicit biases, we actively have to work against. So again, thank you for your work in that area.
Thank you, Mr. Mondragon. Okay, that's all we have. Kristen Rush for public comment.
Yes, for public comment, that's all.
Thank you. Okay, we have a couple of resolutions. The first resolution tonight is R21050, a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the city and county of Denver, acting by and through its Board of Water Commissioners, Denver Water, the city of Arvada, and North Table Mountain Water and Sanitation District for the planned shutdown of Ralston Reservoir to perform the Ralston Reservoir Dam Upstream Control Renovation Project. Mr. Devon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this intergovernmental agreement will enable that project to move forward which is important to Denver Water, while at the same time allowing us, the city of Arvada and North Table Mountain Water and Sanitation District, to be able to receive water and have that water transmitted to our primary water treatment facility, which is the Ralston Water Treatment Plant. And also for the city to cover the cost, the additional associated costs for this work. For example, we are putting in a pump station in order to allow this to happen, and we will be able to receive our costs associated with that pump station, the operation of that pump station, for the ability to offset the be able to receive the water and have it pumped to our Ralston Water Treatment Plant. We think this is a win-win for actually all three agencies, including North Water Table Mountain and Sanitation District, and we're recommending approval of the resolution.
Okay, City Council questions or action? Ms. Ford?
I'd like to make a motion if there are no questions.
I see no questions. You may proceed.
I move that R21-050, a resolution authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the city and county of Denver, acting by and through its Board of Water Commissioners, Denver Water, the City of Arvada and North Table Mountain Water and Sanitation District for the planned shutdown of Ralston Reservoir to perform the Ralston Reservoir Dam Upstream Control Renovation Project be approved.
Motions for approval. Mr. Pfeiffer,
Yes.
Ms. Ford,
Yes?
Jones,
Yes.
Marriott,
Yes.
Simpson,
Yes.
Mayor votes aye. Ms. Miller,
Yes.
that's unanimous. We'll next move on to Resolution 21051, a resolution authorizing a 10th extension of the effective date of the city manager's declaration of emergency relating to the novel coronavirus COVID-19 and the associated public health crisis. Ms. Morris?
Thank you, Your Honor. Tonight, we're asking City Council to extend the existing emergency declaration from its current expiration date on March 31st through the end of May 2021. The reason that we're asking Council for this extension, we understand that this pandemic has been a situation that has gone on for longer than we all expected. However, we still are experiencing the effects of the pandemic that require and make it practical for us to have this emergency declaration in place so that the city can continue functioning in a flexible way, that we still have the tools that we need from that perspective to respond to this pandemic. We do still have questions out there, even as we're rolling out vaccines, about variants of the COVID-19 virus that might create issues in the future. We also believe that it's best practice to leave the emergency declaration in place so that the city can avail itself of all potential funding opportunities, and we just have a little bit of uncertainty on the horizon as to what those potential funding opportunities related to pandemic expenses might look like at this juncture. So for those reasons, we have requested an extension. Obviously, as always, the city manager is very cognizant of when and how he exercises this emergency declaration authority. And we always inform council as to how the city manager has exercised this authority. But for the reasons that we had stated, and also given those safeguards, we would ask that the city council extend the emergency declaration through the end of May 2021, and that you would vote to approve R21051, a resolution authorizing a 10th extension of the effective date of the city manager's declaration of emergency related to the novel coronavirus, COVID-19, and the associated public health crisis.
Okay, I'll open it up for council questions or action.
I have a question. Oh, sorry.
Yes, Ms. Jones.
Bob did a virtual raising of hand. I did a physical raising hand. So I'm just, end of May seems like a long period of time. I think I'd prefer to see this on a 30-day basis. So coming back to us a month from now, to extend it, in through May, but I would say to extend it through the end of April as opposed to through the end of May would be my only comment. Feels like we're getting to the end.
Pfeiffer?
Well, I don't know if we want to discuss that. I was just going to make the motion, but Mr. Jones has a valid point. So,
Ms. Miller?
Thank you, Your Honor. I tend to agree with Councilmember Jones. I feel like some of the conversations we have is that, we heard this on the meeting with the Tri-County Public Health Officer last week, was that, it's the governor's hope that the state mandate is taken away by the end of April, and the dial just becomes a suggestion or recommendation. So he's even considering lifting that state mandate by the end of April. So I tend to agree with Mr. Jones on this.
Ms. Simpson, did you have a comment?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I actually wanted to agree with Mayor Pro Tem Miller and Mr. Jones. End of April seems like a nice compromise. We can always extend if we need to, but based on the president's hope that we could do general population by May 1st and the governor's statement that he thinks Colorado could potentially be doing general population as soon as mid-April, which I know we're all pretty excited about. I tend to agree, let's reassess sooner. And if we need to extend, we can, but this way we at least have the option to look at that.
Mr. Pfeiffer, did you have another comment?
Well, I just want to ask Mr. Devon, I mean, if we shorten it, and does it affect any funding or any other, issues that you can foresee?
Not that I know of. I don't think we could, I don't think I can say for sure that would affect any funding. So the end of May, I think part of the reason for the end of May was some of the decisions we might have to make in association with the Old Town street closure. But I'm fine with the end of April. Truthfully, I'm fine with not having an emergency anymore at all.
Okay, so if I'm hearing a consensus towards going towards or saying at the end of April with the option to extend it if needed. If somebody wants to make that motion in the alternative to the motion that was submitted to us, if that's the desire, or if people want to vote on that separately, we certainly can. Whoever wants to make the motion.
I could make the motion, Mayor,
Go ahead.
I move that resolution 21-051, a resolution authorizing a 10th extension of the effective date of the city manager's declaration of emergency relating to the novel coronavirus COVID-19 and associated public health crisis be approved with a edit to the end date of being April 30th.
Any discussion on that motion before we vote?
I would like to ask the question, what would be the purpose of not extending it to the end of May? I mean, or what would be the hardship if we did extend it to the end of May?
Go ahead, Mr. Marriott.
If someone wants to answer Councilmember Ford's question, that's fine with me. I was going to comment on the motion that's on the table, which I would be happy to do now if you'd like me to.
Go ahead. I think you can incorporate, because I truly think that Ms. Ford's question is going to this motion. So.
Okay, sounds good. Well, let me just make my comment. So I will be voting no on this motion, but not because I would like the emergency declaration to be for 60 days, but because I think it should not be renewed at all. And I have a couple reasons for it. Number one is I want to start by saying I have no qualms or problems with any of the city managers or the city's actions under these emergency orders so far. So for the period of the whole last year, I am absolutely fine with every decision that's been made and the manner in which they've been made. I also don't have any fear of the city or the manager making bad decisions going forward. I believe, again, because of the way these decisions have been made, I don't have any fear of that. I think Ms. Ford brought it up about, well, it couldn't hurt. Why wouldn't you just continue doing it? Because it couldn't hurt. And for me, I think there is a reason for that. And that is, I believe that it is time to get back to normal. I believe the trajectory of this emergency order has run its course. I worry greatly about our residents in Arvada changing their patterns and their behaviors long term. I think some of that's absolutely unavoidable, and some of that will be negative. And I worry that the longer we continue this, the more pronounced those things get. So when I weigh the positives of continuing it versus the positives of ending it, I come down very squarely on the side of the positives. For me, I'll lie on the side of ending it. So regardless of whether this motion is for a 30-day extension or a 60-day extension, I will be voting no.
Mr. Jones, do you want to speak as to why you suggested going to 30 instead of 60?
Not that my reasoning lines up completely with Mr. Marriott. But again, I think that we're drawing to the end of this with all the indications and public comment that the governor has made with regard to where he hopes we are going as a state. It feels like we ought to be sending the same kind of message that as a city, we also believe that and support the governor in, you know, the hope that by April 1st, we're going to have access to more vaccines and possibly a reduction of obviously more cases and so on and so forth. And so again, I just think that we're to a point now where we've got a pretty good idea of what needs to be done, and 30 days at a time seems like, you know, a reasonable thing to do. Again, I don't have any issues with the way that the city manager has used this authority over the last year. You know, a year ago when we extended it, I don't think any of us believed that it would be a year, but here we are. And so, you know, I think that extending it on a month-to-month basis is a reasonable request, and it provides the city manager and his team an opportunity to truly dive in and look at it at a month-to-month basis. And if they need it again for another month, they can come back and ask.
Great. I don't see other comments. Mr. Jones, you make a convincing argument to me. I will be supporting Mr. Pfeiffer's motion. I was going to be fine with the 60-day extension, but certainly I think it does send a message that we're getting to the end and extending on a month-to-month basis rather than just defaulting to 2 months. I think it's justifiable, so I'll be supporting the motion. Ms. Ford, how do you vote?
I'll support it.
Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marriott?
No.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
Mayor votes aye. Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Okay, that passes 6-1 with Mr. Marriott voting no for reasons he has stated. With that, we will move on to first readings. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Your Honor. I move that Council Bill 21-009, an ordinance annexing certain land into the city of Arvada, Lazy Susan, 16770 and 16790 West 63rd Place, and Council Bill 21-010, an ordinance rezoning certain land within the city of Arvada, Lazy Susan, from Jefferson County R1 residential to RN 12.5 residential neighborhood, 1.5 DUAC, and amending the official zoning maps of the city of Arvada, Colorado, generally located at 16770, 16790 West 63rd Place, and Council Bill 21-012, an ordinance vacating a public access easement located within Lot 4B, Block 1, Candelas Commercial, City of Arvada, County of Jefferson, State of Colorado. All be approved on first reading, ordered published in full, and public hearing to be set for April 5th, 2021 at 6:15 p.m.
Jones, how do you vote?
Yes.
Marriott?
Yes.
Ms. Simpson?
Aye.
Mayor votes aye. Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Yes.
Okay, those all pass unanimously. We broke out one. Ms. Miller, if you'll read that one.
Councilmember Marriott has his hand raised. Did you need before I read this?
I don't know it's before, but go ahead.
I think you
Mr.
can
Marriott.
you can go ahead and read it,
Go ahead and read it.
Mayor Pro Tem Miller, and then I'll speak. Sorry, jumped the
No
gun.
worries. I move that Council Bill 21-011, an ordinance vacating a tract of land dedicated as right-of-way for West 52nd Place, west of Carr Street, City of Arvada, County of Jefferson, State of Colorado, be approved on first reading, ordered published in full, and public hearing to be set for April 5th, 2021 at 6:15 p.m.
Marriott.
Yes, thank you, Your Honor. So to the mayor and the rest of council, I potentially have a conflict of interest with this ordinance. And I know this is just a first reading, but I wanted to be abundantly cautious and consistent. I own 2 adjoining properties to the property that this tract of land sits on. And so because of that, I would ask if the council would please allow me to recuse myself for this item.
Okay, so I need a motion to excuse Mr. Marriott from this item.
So moved, your mayor.
Thank you. We have that motion. Ms. Simpson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mayor votes aye. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Ms. Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Ms. Ford?
Aye.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marriott is excused from voting on this item on a 6-0 vote. Let's next vote on the first reading. Ms. Simpson, how do you vote?
Aye.
Mayor votes aye. Ms. Miller?
Aye.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Aye.
Ford?
Yes.
Jones?
Yes.
That passes 6-0 with Mr. Marriott being excused from voting. So that moves on to public hearing on April 5th as well. We can now move on to our public hearings. The first of our public hearings, I'll open the public hearing on the conditional use for Morgan Ralston Creek, generally located at 9881 West 58th Avenue. Mr. Devon.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, members of the council. We'll have Planning Manager Rob Smetana introduce this item.
Thank you. Mayor and members of council, the applicant is requesting conditional use approval to allow for the development of a residential use within the mixed-use urban zoning district. The site is currently occupied by a vacant big box store and a fast food restaurant and is approximately 8.4 acres in size. Access to the site is proposed to be provided from both 58th Avenue as well as 58th Place. The the conditional use, 2 conceptual plans were submitted as part of the conditional use request. The project is proposed to contain either 300 or 328 residential units in 2 or 3 buildings with a maximum height of 5 stories, which is allowed in the MXU zoning district at this location. The concept plans developed depend on the continued operation of the Good Times store. Both plans include approximately 10,200 square feet of retail space and an amenity building. Parking is proposed to be provided in both a structure and surface spaces. Additionally, the applicant is proposing to restrict 5% of the units for persons or families making 80% of the median area income, in addition to the market rate units. A site plan application will be required should the conditional use for residential at this location be approved by council. As part of the site plan, staff will review the specific details of the project against the Land Development Code requirements. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the conditional use request at their February 16th meeting. And that was subject to the 2 conditions that were identified in the staff report. We have received the signed posting log and mailing affidavit, and they are in order. The applicant is in attendance for presentation and questions. We also have planner Jeremiah Bebo and development engineering manager Jenny Wolfschlag here to answer any questions from the staff perspective as well. Thank you.
Very good. The posting log and the mailing affidavit will be made part of the record. We're on the honor system here. If you are going to testify in these proceedings, either for the applicant or in opposition or in support, if you'll raise your right hand and swear and affirm that whatever testimony you're going to give in these proceedings will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. I will assume that you have taken that oath and that you have been sworn in. I'll turn it over to the applicant to make their presentation.
Hi, good evening, Council. This is Bonnie with Norse Design. I believe Lauren Brockman is going to speak first. Lauren, are you still there?
Good evening. Sorry about that. My name is Lauren Brockman. I am the developer of this site. My last name is Brockman. My office address is 50 South Steel Street, Suite 420, Denver, Colorado. We're here tonight, as noted earlier, for the approval of a conditional use permit for Morgan Ralston Creek, a proposed 300 to 328 mixed-use multifamily rental community with approximately 10,000 square feet of retail located at the former Kmart location at 58th and Ralston. Assume most of you know the location. Just a little background on the developer. Morgan is a third-generation multifamily developer. They both develop, construction, and property manage. Built over 20,000 units in 5 states over the last 30 years. They're no stranger to developing within the Front Range. Developed roughly 5,000 units within the Denver metro area. Morgan is we're currently developing a 316 unit community under construction in the tech center. I personally have lived in Denver since '96 and have been active in multifamily development in the metro since 1993. I think redevelopment's not new to me. I've redeveloped part of the Sisters of Mercy Hospital near City Park in Denver. And I also redeveloped an old office building on Spear Boulevard in Denver. We, as a development company, are very, very excited about this site. Obviously, there's a lot of reasons, but most of them are the fact that we're near parks, which the city's invested in, hike and bike trails, not too far from light rail access, along with the existing Starbucks, King Soopers, and numerous restaurants in the area. It is worth noting that the one opponent to this is Brixmor, which owns the King Soopers Retail Center. As we stated in the Planning Commission meeting, we will make an earnest effort to continue to negotiate an easement with Brixmor to give them access to their loading docks. As such, we have provided Brixmor, their local council, with an easement agreement, and we are awaiting their comments to this agreement. A quick overview of the site. It is 8.42 acres on the abandoned Kmart. The conditional use approval is for the entire site, which includes the existing vacant Kmart, the Kmart parking lot, Good Times, and that's it. The site does exclude McDonald's and Starbucks. We have made progress with Good Times to terminate their lease and make that part of the site part of our development, which is where we go from 300 units to 328 units. We have not, as of today, negotiated a full agreement, so we're still in that kind of no man's land between knowing whether we're going to develop 300 units or 328 units. There's another high-level item that we thought was worth mentioning, and that is we have reached out to the Arvada Center and had a meeting with them on Zoom recently to talk about potentially providing some public art within our development, either murals or other types of artwork within the development. That said, I'm going to turn it over to Bonnie with Norris Design to walk you through the specifics of the development. Thank you for your time again, and I'm here for any questions.
Thanks, Lauren. Bonnie Niziolek, that's Niziolek, with Norris Design at 1101 Bannock Street in Denver. Thank you, Mayor, City Council, and staff for your time this evening. If you could go to the next slide, I think you can actually go ahead 2 slides. Perfect, thank you. As we just studied the redevelopment opportunities for this property, the first thing we did was read through the city's master plan documents. The comprehensive plan designates the site as mixed use. This category is intended to promote a wide range of land uses, including retail and medium and higher density residential. It describes a minimum density of 12 DUs per acre to provide greater housing diversity and support transit with integrated pedestrian-friendly designs. The site is also guided by the Ralston Fields Urban Renewal Plan, which describes a connected, mixed-use, pedestrian-oriented environment and establishes an east-west Main Street that provides light vehicle activity and good pedestrian connectivity. The zoning for the site is mixed-use urban. The current land development code defines mixed-use urban as intended to provide for a variety of residential and non-residential uses in vertically mixed use, horizontally mixed use, or single-use configurations with an urban character, and encourages vertical and horizontal mixed-use multi-story buildings with pedestrian-friendly streetscapes, public amenities, and good access to public transportation. The zone district includes a number of development standards such as building height, build-to frontages, and setbacks, all of which will be studied and refined in detail during the site plan review process. Next slide. Upon reviewing these master plan documents, we wanted to engage the community to get initial feedback. Prior to making a formal submittal, we had conceptual discussions with Mayor Williams, Councilmember Marriott, and Ora's Marine Fair. Within these discussions, we heard the importance of maintaining some commercial uses, including an east-west Main Street, hiding the parking from the main entry along Ralston, and including some public gathering space. We then held 2 neighborhood meetings, an in-person open house where people could sign up for socially distanced small group time slot discussions, followed by a virtual neighborhood meeting. Both meetings were held on October 29th, 2020. Approximately 60 mailings were sent, with approximately 14 people attending in person and approximately 50 people attending virtually. Overall, the response was generally positive, with questions ranging from the number of homes proposed, the amount of commercial proposed, along with the amount of parking proposed and where it was located. Additionally, there are questions about traffic impacts, projected rental prices, and interest in seeing something new in this space. In general, the city's planning documents were generally consistent with what we heard during our public outreach. Next slide. As Lauren mentioned, 2 options have been included in our conditional use submittal. The first conceptual site plan option includes the full 8.42 acre redevelopment, including the Good Times land shown here in the yellow diagonal hatch. Next slide. The community design is oriented around a gridded urban circulation network with a primary entry from 58th Avenue terminating into an east-west Main Street bisecting the site. It is intentionally laid out with a more urban Main Street feel, which is consistent with the vision of the triangle area of the Ralston Fields Urban Renewal Plan and creates connections between the existing land uses to the east and west, while intersection jogs slow traffic through the proposed mixed-use community. The main residential building to the north is 5 stories with a 2-story parking garage in the rear. The front building steps down to 4 stories along the north entry drive and again to 1 and 2 stories along Ralston. Next slide. The conceptual plan includes approximately 328 homes with a mix of studio, 1-bedroom, and 2-bedroom units. 560 parking spaces at a parking ratio of approximately 1.71 spaces per unit are provided in a mix of surface parking spaces, garage spaces, and tuck-under garages. The community plans to include 5% of the units as affordable units at 80% AMI across all unit types. 2 community amenity spaces are shown here in orange. 10,200 square feet of commercial space is proposed along 58th Avenue frontage and the main entry shown in red. Next slide. The option 2 conceptual site plan illustrates an alternative plan if Good Times remains. You can see Good Times here at the forefront of the image. The residential building along the west side of the access drive is removed and the community amenity shifts north of Good Times. The rest of the site plan remains unchanged. This conceptual plan includes 300 units. Parking is also unchanged and remains at 560 parking spaces at a ratio of 1.87 spaces per unit. Like the previous plan, 5% of the units are intended as affordable at 80% AMI, and the ground floor commercial space is still located along 58th and the entry drive. Next slide. So here you can see, again, the good times at the bottom left of the community with the double height amenity space just to the north and the existing commercial just to the east. Next slide. The proposed commercial space is not affected by good times remaining in the operation. The 10,200 square feet proposed is consistent in both plans. This commercial space will help activate the street and provide a continued mix of uses as outlined in the urban renewal plan. The details of the commercial spaces will be further refined during the site plan process, but may include traditional retail spaces along with potential artist studios or boutique commercial spaces. Next slide. The architectural concept is also consistent between the two plans. The buildings are designed in a modern architectural style reflected in the undulating flat roofs, rectangular forms, and simplified detailing. A combination of brick and fiber cement panel materials, as well as storefront in the retail and amenity locations, is used to create dynamic facades. Next slide. Both site plan options also include an urban park. A minimum of 10% of the site area is required to be an urban park. This is conceptually proposed along the western edge of the community and throughout the pedestrian-friendly streetscapes as shown in the dashed outline areas here. The main park area is located in the southwest portion of the community and is visible and accessible to the surrounding community. It is intended to be a public gathering space with great access to the adjacent church and coffee shop. The balance of the park space is made up of pedestrian-focused streetscape that invites street activation with the use of an open turf area, colorful planters and pots, seating elements, and potential art. Additionally, a minimum of 15% of the site will be used for landscape purposes. These details will be further developed during the site plan, but overall, the plan converts an existing asphalt parking lot into a pedestrian-friendly and activated community with a quarter-acre publicly accessible park. Next slide. Finally, many of the images we've shown tonight incorporated some art elements. Potential art components could include murals, art pedestals for installations, and site furniture. We look forward to continuing to discuss art opportunities with the Arvada Center. Next slide. In summary, the two proposed conceptual plans range from 300 to 328 multifamily homes with approximately 560 parking spaces. Both plans include 5% of units at 80% AMI and 10,200 square feet of commercial space. They each include urban park amenities to help create a pedestrian-friendly streetscape combined with thoughtful architecture to encourage community interactions. Next slide. As outlined in the staff report, the proposed conditional use meets all approval criteria. First, the application complies with all applicable standards. No modifications are being requested with this application. Second, the addition of the multifamily use is consistent with the comp plan, which designates the site and its surrounding context as mixed use. This designation includes a variety of uses, including higher density residential. Third, the conditional use is consistent with the purpose intent of the zone district. Fourth, the size, scale, height, density, and traffic impacts are consistent with the planned uses in the surrounding area. The surrounding properties have the consistent comp plan land use and zoning designations and are part of the same urban renewal plan. Next, the necessary services are available for the site. And finally, we have mitigated adverse impacts to adjacent properties related to the addition of the multifamily use, which is under your review tonight. We have reached out to the adjacent property owners and will continue to work with them during the site plan review process. Based on these criteria and the letter previously submitted today that we would like to incorporate into the record, we respectfully request your approval for the conditional use as presented this evening, allowing multifamily homes across the full 8.42 acre site, creating the mixed use community envisioned in the city's planning documents. Thank you for your time this evening, and our full team is here to answer any questions you may have.
That completes your presentation.
It does, thank you.
Very good. Do we have anyone signed up that wishes to speak on this issue?
Yes, we have Ryan Sugden.
Ryan, were you sworn in? Ryan, are you there?
I am, sir. Can you hear me?
I can. Are you? Did you swear? When I did the oath, did you join in on that?
I actually raised my hand with you.
Very good. You may proceed.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you very much for your time. My name is Ryan Sugden, and I represent the owner of the Arvada Plaza, which is the property immediately east of the proposed development. The Arvada Plaza has a number of tenants, including King Soopers and the Arc Thrift Store. The Arvada Plaza has been a cornerstone of commerce in this area since the 1960s. In fact, I believe from my own research, the King Soopers in the Arvada Plaza is one of the oldest in the company's history. I submitted detailed written comments to the Planning Commission summarizing my client's position on this application, and I incorporate those comments here. Our big issue is access. The proposed development cuts off access for King Soopers delivery trucks to the Arvada Plaza's loading docks, which they've had for well over 50 years. I want to emphasize 2 points from my letter in my comments here. First, Mr. Brockman referred to Brixmor, which is the owner of the Arvada Plaza, as being an opponent of this development. Brixmor supports this development provided it accommodates Brixmor's legal rights and its long-standing existing use. The loss of access to these loading docks negatively affects the community generally and the Arvada Plaza specifically. We all support good development, and this application could be a boon to the area. However, it comes at the expense of a very long-standing pre-existing development in the community. The Arvada Plaza and the Kmart property are parties to an agreement from 1958, still valid today, that envisions cross-access. Indeed, the properties were developed in tandem and access has been continuously provided for trucking purposes. Without safe access to these loading docks, a grocery store cannot survive. Losing this grocery store would be very detrimental to the surrounding community. Indeed, the applicant, public commenters, and the Planning Commission itself want residents of the development to be able to walk to the grocery store, which cannot happen if the grocery store cannot survive because of the development. Second, these impacts can be easily avoided. The applicant already envisions a perimeter access road around the development where trucking access is needed and has been provided for years. Requiring the applicant to dedicate a public alley or provide private access to the Arvada Plaza over these roads is within the city's authority and is good policy. It allows redevelopment to happen smartly in a cohesive manner with long-standing corporate citizens in the community. For those reasons, we urge the council to approve this application on the condition that access be provided to the Arvada Plaza as proposed in my letter, or deny it for those reasons. I yield back my 4 seconds. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Do we have anybody else signed up to speak, Ms. Rush?
We do not, that's all.
Okay, I'll turn it back to the applicant to speak to the issue that was brought up during public testimony.
Lauren, did you want me to address that?
Yes, please.
Very well. Mayor, members of council, city staff, and members of the public, for the record, my name is Carolyn White. I'm land use counsel for the applicant. And thank you for the opportunity to provide some concluding remarks following public comment. I want to also just briefly reference a letter that we provided to the city earlier today, which mostly 90% of it summarizes in written form the presentation that was given to you today about the project and how it meets the criteria for a conditional use permit. But there are a few paragraphs at the end summarizing, again, in written form, what I'm about to say relative to Mr. Sugden's comments about the application. I think the bottom line that we'd like to communicate to council relative to the easement referenced by Mr. Sugden is that while it is true that there was once an access agreement between the two properties, that access agreement has in fact expired, and there is no present legal right to access for that adjacent property owner. Notwithstanding that, our client, the applicant, really does want to be a good neighbor and is willing to work with them and has in fact proposed to them a draft of an easement agreement with appropriate market terms for their consideration, and will continue to work in good faith to try to negotiate a suitable agreement for both parties to ensure that they continue to have access, but do so in a way that doesn't interfere with the operation and functionality and enjoyment of this particular proposed project. But that said, it doesn't really fit with a conditional use review, as Mr. Sugden is asking you to make it a condition of approval here, in the sense that to the extent that the adjacent property owner has an access issue, it is not caused by the fact that the proposed use could be residential, which is the subject of the conditional use application. Any development of this property could potentially result in a loss of access, regardless of whether that development is commercial, industrial, residential, or simply reopening the doors of the existing vacant building that sits there. The fact is, there is no longer a legal right to access, but access certainly can be worked out, and the parties just need to do so in the normal course. And certainly on behalf of the applicant, we commit to using all reasonable good faith efforts to try to work out an easement agreement. So with that, we would ask you not to impose that as a condition of approval, and nonetheless to approve this application, as it does meet all of the criteria for a conditional use permit. We're also happy to answer any specific questions you might have about any components of the application, including the easement access claim.
Thank you. With that, I will close the public comment portion and the presentation and rebuttal by the applicant, open it up for city council questions. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just have a question regarding the easement and working it out, just so that I understand on my end. Is the proposal something that's doable with the current development, and it's just a matter of it's always been done like that and was done for free, and now we're proposing, or you're proposing, that they pay for access? So is it a cost thing, or is it the proposal isn't actually doable with the trucks?
Somebody want
And Ms. Morris, if I'm not allowed to ask that, you just tell me, because I may be way out overstepping my boundaries here. So you can be like, Mayor Pro Tem Miller. Can't ask that.
Are you asking the applicant or are you asking Brixmor?
Well, first she's asking city attorney if that's an appropriate question.
Okay.
You can ask the question if it helps you in your analysis. As Ms. White stated, our focus here is on analyzing the use and the impact of the use to surrounding properties. So to the extent that getting the response to your question might help you answer that, then I would say that that's okay. That's an okay focus. But what we're here to do tonight is focused on how this particular use, this residential use, might impact surrounding properties.
Great, yeah. So I think my question is to maybe Ms. White, this might be a question for you. If the proposals are actually allowing access that is doable and trucks can get through with the development that you're proposing.
It might be more appropriate for Mr. Brockman to answer that, but I would say that I'm not aware of any feedback that the configuration for the new access easement proposed, though different from the historical access, is not suitable in its configuration. If that is the feeling of the Brixmor folks, we haven't heard that.
That actually asked my question way more eloquently than I did. Thank you for that. I appreciate you.
I don't have anything further to say. Carolyn is exactly right. The way it's configured, it works very effectively.
Okay, other questions from council? Mr. Marriott.
Thank you. I have a question for the applicant. So as I've looked through your proposal and everything that's in the packet, you guys did just a marvelous job with renderings, probably the best I've ever seen. So thank you for that. Whoever did that, that was terrific. Helps us really see this. But the question I have is, when you're thinking about this development and proposing this development, what caused you to pick either as much or as little amount of commercial opportunity here as you picked. And let me refine that just a little bit. In one particular option, you have your leasing office and amenity zone right up against the street, which that's good advertising to the passing cars for your residential project. But on the other option, you've got it set back and would provide an excellent spot for additional commercial opportunity there. So there must have been something that caused you to choose how much commercial opportunity you are offering here. And I guess I just want to know what it is that caused you to pick as much or as little as you did.
Thank you for the question. It really comes down to marketability. If you look around, retail has really suffered, and it's going to continue to suffer just because of the changing dynamics within retail. We feel like we provided enough retail that gave us a critical mass. So it wasn't just one retail person. There was a bit of a cohesiveness between various uses. However, we also understand the dynamics of the market and that retail as a whole is a very difficult product type. And I don't think that's just because of the pandemic. We've seen that go along for the last, basically in my career, in the last 15 years.
Looks like you froze up.
This is Bonnie with Norris Design. I can just expand on that a little bit.
Okay.
In addition to marketability, we really wanted to create the right balance. So today it's an existing retail building that hasn't been successful. And so trying to find that right balance between getting retail components, but not having too much. The land development code really encourages activation of the streetscape, and having that balance in the option that does redevelop the good times provides street activation through retail along the northern side of the street on the eastern portion of the project, with the activation of the clubhouse and amenity space. They'll have similar design components with storefront materials, things like that, and have additional active uses through the clubhouse, the fitness center, things like that. So trying to create that balance of a great pedestrian friendly activated environment that meets the market demand for retail.
Okay, thank you. Let me follow that up with another question. So first I'd ask you just a quick, easy question. Approximately how many individuals will be living in this development when it's all built? I realize it's 300 or 328 units, but how many people does that equate to?
I believe we had a rough number, just using some of the city's criteria when it comes to people. So if we had 328 units using the city school and public land dedication, that would be approximately 614 people, just to use a population number that is familiar to you all.
Okay, sounds good. No, that's fine. Thank you. And I'm sure you're aware of other proposed residential projects to the east of here between Garrison Street and Independence. Are you familiar with that?
Yes.
And do you know approximately how many people may be new residents there?
Isn't that development roughly 180 units, Bonnie?
I don't have those numbers.
I think Ms. Fair may have that information. Are you talking on the old city?
No, I was talking about the project Jim Loftus is doing on the north side of Ralston Road, as well as the Berkeley Homes townhomes. Just kind of an idea of roughly how many new residents will be residing in that spot.
Yeah, Ms. Fair should have that information.
So I think the way to answer that, Councilman Mariotti, is on average, we're running between 1.75 to 1.85 persons per unit.
Per unit.
So that's it's a pretty good rule of thumb.
Okay, so I think I know the answer, not exactly, but it's another 400-ish or so residents over there. And then on the south side of Ralston Road at the city's old water treatment plant, there's a proposal for an affordable housing project there that would be somewhere around 185 to 200 more residents. And then to the west at 58th and Ward Road, there's the Sabel development, which is another 700 or 800 residents there. And so as I look at those, I see a whole lot of new residents kind of in the area. And I understand also the trends of retail and commercial space and all that, but I just wonder if when you made the decision about the amount of commercial space you were going to offer, were you taking into account not just your own development within its property, but the surrounding developments and the surrounding available commercial and what those opportunities may be, not today when nothing is built, but in the very near future as all these projects become completed and then become populated with residents?
Although that information wasn't available at the time that we looked at this, I can tell you that it wouldn't change my mind greatly. Again, retail in a mixed-use community has not leased very well in most locations. And my experience is the redevelopment I did at 2785 Spear has 60,000 cars a day. It has parking that's dedicated only to the retail. And we have that development in of itself roughly has about 12,000 square feet of retail. We ended up leasing the final portion of that retail to somebody to use as office space. So very, very prime location, a great deal of density, and it was not well received by the retail community.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate that.
Jones.
Thank you. My questions are for the applicant. And maybe I missed this, but could you help me understand the coin toss on good times and what it is that you're trying to accomplish with good times or without good times?
So the good times lease automatically terminates in 5 years. The way we're looking at it is if we can develop this as one development at one time, by good times leaving now when we're doing the initial development, it's more cost effective and it's just more efficient. The other thing that we like, which was brought up earlier, is the fact that we are moving our leasing office and our amenities up to 58th Street, which creates more of an urban appeal from a planning standpoint and gives us that visibility along 58th, which does help our development from a leasing standpoint and just typical marketing.
And so you're the property owner. So the lease that Good Times has is with you. Is that right?
Yes. When we purchased the land, we're under contract now, but yes, it is part of our purchase.
Okay. Is Good Times a corporation or is it a franchise-y type of situation?
That's actually a corporate location.
Okay. And so is there, as part of, again, being a good corporate neighbor or citizen, are you proposing as part of the cancellation of their lease, a relocation agreement, helping them continue to stay in business in that area? Because it seems to me, and I don't know what their volume is, but it seems to me like it's a relatively good location.
So the terms of the possible lease termination are 6 months free rent and a termination fee that's sizable.
Okay.
To allow them to use those funds to go elsewhere or, use as a corporate, whatever they want to do with it.
Okay. And then, again, going back to Ms. Morris's statement about what we're here tonight to do, which is to evaluate the conditional use permit for the use of this particular piece of property in a residential format or a mixed use format. and the use of that format on the surrounding properties. So I don't see anywhere in the plan where you indicate where an access for the adjacent properties for trucking might be located. Can you help us understand where that access would be located?
You pull up the presentation and pull up a site plan. There you go, Kevin. So it's basically, there is a drive aisle on the west side of the property that runs north-south, and then it runs east-west along the north property line. And in the northeast corner of that drive aisle, that's where a delivery truck could access the loading docks for King Supers.
Hey, Kevin, can you go to the other drawing?
Yes.
I think that one shows it better since it's all behind the marking there.
Yes, much better.
Thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Yeah, and I saw that, but what confused me was it looks to be like there's some sort of an emergency access language and access only with possible gating. And then again, I don't know if the red or burgundy property fence line, what that looks like in kind of real life. Obviously, this is not the final drawings, but it appears as though you're going to have some sort of property fencing. And how does that access then work for the adjacent properties and impacts on adjacent properties?
So with the easement agreement that we are negotiating with Brixmore, the retail owner of the King Supers, that access gate would be a gate that they have the proper controls to open and close accordingly. We really don't want other individuals driving back and forth along there that don't need to be, because they're not gaining any access. That lane was initially installed along the west side, the north side, and the east side to provide fire department access. But it also works very well to give King Supers access to their loading dock.
Okay, so the fenced area on the northeast corner, which would be closest to the adjacent property of the grocery store, that then would have another access gate that they would then go through to get off of your property and onto their property.
Yes.
Okay, and then so for them to exit their property, they'd have to then follow the same path to go back out through your property. It looks like go through 3 different access gates.
No, they would come in off 58 along the west drive aisle and go north to that northern drive aisle and then go east to their loading dock. And then when they exit, they don't have the turning radius behind their building. Even today, to exit back going west, they always exit out to Ralston Creek.
That's right, because those loading docks, they actually go in and then back into them that way. You're right. Okay, thank you for that clarification. So again, you're saying they're going to enter your property off of West 58th Avenue or off of 58th Place?
We've proposed both. We're open to both. I think from a functional standpoint, probably coming off 58th is easier because they're making fewer turns going back and forth left and right in tight positions. But we're open to both. And Mr. Sugden has brought up that they may want to come in off 58th Place. But we don't care either way.
Okay, thank you. That's all the questions I have for now.
Other council questions?
Mark,
Yes. Ms.
I
Ford.
would just like to ask the question, even though this is not relevant to the conditional use, but it is for me because I go back to adverse impact. When we're talking about those trucks coming into King Super, how many are we looking at per day?
We've been told at least 5 a day, but we don't know that for a fact. I know that Mr. Sugden is working with his client to get a better feel of what that number is.
Okay, and then looking at the design, Lauren, then do you feel that trucks going by that urban park would be a problem if they came off of 58th Avenue and Kipling there?
I personally don't see it to be a big issue. I mean, 5 trucks within a 24-hour period is not that many. I personally don't see an issue with that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, other questions from council? Not seeing any. Oh, Mr. Marriott.
Yeah, Mark, I have just a question for you as the chair of the meeting here, and or a request maybe, and that would be that whoever makes a motion on this, if we could make motions for the 2 options separately and vote on them separately rather than trying to make one motion that incorporates both.
I'll ask the city attorney to speak to that.
So my thought here is that if council feels that the impact of the residential development in option 1 versus the impact of the residential proposed in option 2 is different on the surrounding properties, then it's permissible to make a distinction between them. But we really are, again, we're focused on that residential use. How is this residential use potentially impacting neighboring properties differently than another type of use? So long as that's the reason for splitting out the 2, then I think that's permissible. And I'd encourage you to articulate why there's the difference in your mind between the residential use in option 1 versus the residential use, the impact of the residential use in option 2, if that's the concern.
Yeah, I'm struggling with seeing how you could possibly make that as a justification for a difference between these 2 proposals. Because in hearing you talk, Mr. Marriott, it's much more about wanting to preserve commercial space rather than the viability of residential.
Yeah, so I can answer that. I would bring you to approval criteria 4, which talks about the size, scale, height, density, multimodal traffic impacts, hours of operation, similar characteristics, whether they're compatible and whether that's compatible with existing plans. And Urban Renewal has a plan, the Ralston Fields Urban Renewal Plan, and that speaks to creating, attractive pedestrian-oriented village, conversion of some commercial land to higher density residential, but to incorporate existing and new shops and stores and restaurants into the retail environment with the mix of housing. So I think within that criteria comes to a question of whether of the amount of commercial in one proposal versus another. So that's where it's contained within the criteria. But further from that, it's I'm nervous with any of these of essentially approving 2 different things in one motion. I'd much prefer, if we're providing 2 options, we can provide 2 affirmatives or whatever and be more clear about it. So those are really the 2 reasons why I would prefer it. Now, if the council and you as the mayor doesn't want to do that, I'm fine with that too. It was simply a request that I think is clarifying, but I'm fine with however you would like to do it.
Anybody else wish to speak to that issue? Yes, Lauren, Ms. Simpson.
Yes, Mayor, I actually agree with Councilmember Marriott. Simply looking forward, we have another agenda item tonight that has a couple of different options. And given that this is more than one case facing us and that the next hearing has a pretty significant difference between the two options, I would say simply for consistency that we could break them out. Just my thought, simply because that seems to be kind of the agenda for tonight.
Okay, I'm going to again look to legal counsel. Is that an appropriate way to handle this? Ms.
It
Marsh?
is. I think
Okay.
the justification articulated by Councilmember Marriott is focused on the applicable criteria. And so making a distinction between the two is permissible so long as we're looking at that criteria and we really are focused on that use. So I think that's appropriate.
Fair enough. I will allow two motions to be made. I am ready for those motions. We can't have two motions on the table at the same time, so we'll have to do them one at a time. Do I have someone ready to make a motion? Mr. Marriott.
Yeah, thank you, Your Honor. Give me just one quick second here and I will get to the right spot. Okay, so I'm going to move that the conditional use application for Morgan Ralston Creek, generally located at 9881 West 58th Avenue, be approved with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission, and let me think how to say it, and that this apply only to option 2 as shown in the packet, which does not include the removal of the Good Times restaurant. We okay with that, City
Good
Attorney?
Times would remain.
Would
under this
remain, yeah.
motion.
So I'm wanting to take option 2 first.
Okay.
That's
And
fine
so-
with me.
Okay, good. So I'd like to speak to my motion first. I would be voting yes on this motion, and here is why. I think this particular development has a lot that's really, really good. And I think it fits the criteria in option 2 very well. I think also the option 2 provides a future possibility of commercial space, whether it be just the Good Time site or the Good Time site assembled with the Starbucks site next door, and could be many, many different things. Could be, one commercial building, several commercial buildings, or several pads like it's used now. I think my justification for this is that I believe that there will be, in a very short order, many, many, many new residents in this area with the developments that are coming. And our goal all along has been to develop walkable, pedestrian-oriented, transit-oriented development in this area. And certainly the residential part of this provides a component of that, but the commercial provides a component too. It's not any good to have a walkable area if you don't have anywhere for people to walk to, nowhere that they're gonna walk to. And so for me, I think this meets all the criteria for the conditional use permit. And I will be voting yes on this motion.
Mayor,
Yes, Ms. Ford.
could we have clarification on the square footage of Good Times?
The applicant, if you can give us the approximate square footage of that parcel.
The actual building itself or the overall site?
The site where Good Times is.
The overall site.
Bonnie, do you know off the top of your head? I don't know the square footage of that site.
I don't. I only have the building square footage, which is 822.
Probably no greater than 2,500 square feet, Councilmember Ford.
Okay, thank you.
Fairly small site.
it gives me an idea of what we would be adding to the commercial space.
Others that wish to speak to this before I chime in? Okay, let me give you my 2 cents worth, and that may be what they're worth. And to some extent, I'll have to be speaking to the next motion that's going to be being made as well. I can tell you that the Urban Renewal Board has worked very hard on this project and is frankly contributing to the success of this project in terms of both the ability to have lower retail rental rates for the commercial portion, and also to assist with the fact that there's going to be a certain number of below market units in this project, because the Urban Renewal Board feels that's important. They also felt that it was important that option 1, which removes the good times, was the better option from their perspective, because it does truly create that more urban look of a project by bringing the amenity portion of this project up to street front. Urban Renewal pushed for that in terms of the other development that's happened on the north side of Ralston Road through there. You've noticed that all of that's being built right up to the sidewalk. And that's also true with the auto parts store that's on the south side on the Walmart parcel there, that's brought out streetwise as well. I frankly, and with all due deference to Mr. Marriott, the retail of the past is dead, and I don't see it coming back. I certainly want to have the opportunity for retail commercial, and I think that they put a nice aspect of that into this project. I just think from an aesthetic point of view, it looks as a much better complete project by removing the good times. Good times is voluntarily willing to leave. This is not a, condemnation kind of thing where, big bad government's coming and forcing them out so that something else that we like better can go in. This has been a negotiated transaction and you've heard the testimony that there's 5 years remaining on this lease. Frankly, I think that it becomes a better project, looks better, and gives greater potential with the good times removed from the site. And I think gives us a better project. We do have significant commercial in terms of what we are proposing through urban renewal at the intersection of Garrison and 58th Avenue, which is certainly walkable. So there is going to be retail opportunity there. Certainly what we've already done with the shops at Ralston Creek North. And again, the landlord has had a heck of a time leasing that space. And there's still vacancy in there. So I think that there's lots of retail opportunities still in existence with the removal of the good times. And frankly, that good time site, as I think Ms. Ford is pointing out, is not such a large site that it's going to have significant commercial qualifications down the road. So, I'm going to be put in the awkward position of, I'll probably vote yes on both of these, but my clear preference is option 1, just so that the council is aware of what my position is, where I know the Urban Renewal Board is coming from on this. And they've put a lot of time and effort to make sure this is a good, successful project. And I think that the citizen input at the workshop, at the community meetings and stuff was leaning more towards as I recall, the option 1 as well. So that would be my 2 cents worth for what that is worth. So others that wish to comment before we vote on, yes, Ms. Simpson.
Since we're clarifying, I just want to make it known as we go to vote, I will be voting yes on both, but my preference as well is option 1, particularly because of the amicable resolution with the good times that they are willingly giving up this spot. I eat at that good time, so that's important. I'm grateful that they are willing to do that and that a resolution to that was found. But yes, I'll be voting yes on both options with the preference known for option 1.
Okay, anyone else? Not seeing any hands.
Oh, Mr. Mayor,
Yes.
sorry, I just wanted to make one additional comment. I didn't have any, I just wanted to clarify, I had no intention here of trying to force people to do anything except vote on them and give this developer two options if he's successful on both options. So I just want my fellow council members to know, this isn't trying to force people into one or the other, that if both motions are successful, my interest would be that the developer would then have his choice. So just wanted to be clear about that.
I'm glad you're not being obstinate, Mr. Marriott. With that, I will poll the council. I'll begin with you, Mr. Marriott.
Yes.
Ms. Simpson.
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. Ms. Miller.
Yes.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yes.
Ms. Ford.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Okay, option 2 is approved. Mr. Marriott, are you willing to make the motion on the first option?
I am not.
Okay, will someone be willing to make that motion? I had people who said they favored option 1, and I'm sure as heck and hoping somebody will make that motion.
All right.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
Well, because John messed that all up, now I gotta retwizzle it. I moved that the conditional use application for Morgan Ralston Creek, generally located at 9881 West 58th Avenue, be approved with the conditions recommended by the Planning Commission. This is for option 1, which is the removal of, or assuming that the Good Times is no longer there and that the main amenity of the complex, the leasing office, is on 58th Avenue. But this motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Anyone wish to speak again to this motion? Mr. Marriott.
So yeah, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak. So I will be voting no on this motion. And the reason I'll be voting no on this is very much along the line of my questioning, as well as the comments that I made prior. I believe if you look under criteria 4 and existing plans, particularly the urban renewal plan, I believe that this particular option 1 does not provide enough of a walkable, pedestrian oriented community, because there's not sufficient places for them to walk for the stuff they may need on a daily basis, whether that be pharmacy supplies, dry cleaning, food, any restaurant space, any of those types of things. And so to me, this does not meet the conditions of the conditional use. So I'll be voting no.
Thank you. I'll speak to the motion on a different aspect of it. Certainly I'll be supporting this motion, but I want to make it abundantly clear to the applicant, as clear as I can possibly make it, that even though we can't legally make approval of this conditioned upon working out that easement, you damn well better get it worked out. I'm going to leave it at that. You damn well better get it worked out.
We totally agree with you.
Thank you. Ms.
Yes,
Simpson?
Mayor, and I'd like to add that I would like to see that as well. If anything were to happen to that King Soopers, I think it would be an absolute adverse impact on the area. We need grocery stores, and for a development of this size and for the others that are coming in, we definitely need that grocery store. And it would be nice if when we get these applications, that these things are straightened out prior to coming to us, because I personally don't like to vote on things that I'm unsure about. I'm struggling with this as well because I do like a number of aspects of this project. I do struggle with this issue of the commercial, though, as well as Councilmember Marriott does, because we are talking about creating walkable spaces. And I agree with Mr. Marriott. I don't walk unless I have a reason to walk other than exercise, of course. And most of the time when I walk, and I think about walkable, I think about eating ice cream, doing things like that. To me, this site doesn't excite me in terms of what's there. To me, it looks residential. So, I mean, I look at the commercial space, it's 10,200 square feet. I look at the urban park, it's almost as much space. And then, of course, you add in the pool. You know, we have a lot of recreational. I understand that this is where we are in our society. We're very recreationally based. But again, we still have needs that I don't believe are all going to be filled by Amazon and every other online. So I just like to make that comment to our planning team as well, that we're talking about mixed use. To me, this is heavy on residential versus the commercial, and I struggle with that too. So I would really like to see more commercial in the mixed use areas. And otherwise, I think we should stop kidding ourselves and saying that we have mixed use when it's really more towards the residential than the commercial.
Any other comments? Okay, Ms. Simpson, how do you vote?
Aye, but dittoing the mayor's comments.
Maybe with not quite the same profanity. Mayor votes yes. Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
I'll add comments. I agree with the mayor as well. You got to solve it. I think it's very important for both that the residents have a walkable way to a grocery store. Makes your property just equally attractive, if not more attractive than other multi-use families in the area because of that. So I think it behooves you to solve that to make your property and your project successful. And I think, Lauren, I think you know that. So I'll go ahead and be supporting it and echoing the mayor's concerns.
Board?
I'll go ahead and support this project with my comments on record.
Thank you. Mr. Jones?
I will be voting no.
Mr. Marriott?
No.
Fair enough. That passes 5-2. That completes this matter. The applicant has approval for whichever way it wishes to move forward. Next, we'll have the public hearing on the conditional use application for the Clear Creek Commons, approximately located at the southeast corner of West 52nd Avenue and Marshall Street. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, we'll have Planning Manager Rob Spintana introduce this item.
Before you go on, Ms. Simpson raised her hand.
Yes, I just wanted to have it on the record that shortly after my election in November 2019, the developer of this project, who is also the landowner, reached out to me just to, it was pre-concept for this building, for this proposal, and they just wanted to hear about my thoughts, having been recently elected and on the campaign trail, meeting with the people about what was needed in this part of the city. We spitballed lots and lots and lots of ideas, one of which was affordable housing. So I just wanted that on the record that meeting occurred and that I got a couple of updates just through the grapevine as this project moved forward. I had no hand in the design. I had no hand in creating this sort of development as we are hearing it tonight, and it will not impact my vote on this matter.
Thank you. Mr. Devon?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, again, we'll have Planning Manager Rob Spintana present this item.
Thank you. Similar to the last request, the applicant here is also requesting a conditional use to allow for the development of a residential use. However, this time it's within a mixed-use suburban zoning district. The site is located at 52nd and Marshall and is approximately 4.3 acres in size. Access is proposed from both 52nd and Marshall. The concept plan for the project that was submitted with the conditional use request shows a project containing approximately 275 residential units with a maximum height of 5 stories, which is allowed in the MXS zoning district for projects that take advantage of low-income housing tax credits. Parking is proposed to be provided in both structure and surface parking. There was a second plan submitted for a 4-story building. However, given when it came into the process, staff was not able to fully vet that option. A site plan application would be required should the conditional use for the residential at this location be approved, and staff would compare that proposal against the Land Development Code requirements. The Planning Commission unanimously recommended approval of the conditional use request at their January 19th meeting, subject to the project achieving low-income housing tax credits in order to get the 5-story structure. We have received the signed posting log and mailing affidavit, and they are in order. The applicant is in attendance for presentation. We also have Senior Planner Jake Nichols and Jenny Wolfschlag, our Development Engineering Manager, for any staff questions as well. Thank you.
And there was a posting log and mailing affidavit?
Yes, and those are in order. Thank you.
Thank you. Those are made part of the record. I'm going to ask the city attorney now again for some legal or opinion as to whether or not, based upon what I think is going to happen, can we consider 2 motions on this tonight based upon what I've just heard from Rob, that it has not been fully vetted on the 4-story structure?
You can consider it in 2 separate motions. Again, the distinctions here are really going to be, you have a more well-vetted option in the 5-story building. You have an option in the 4-story building that has not been as thoroughly vetted by our team. And to the extent that makes a difference in the votes, it would be appropriate to split those out. In a less vetted option, the way that we link that back to the criteria is that you may not feel that you have enough information to fully apply the criteria for a conditional use permit application to a less vetted option.
Of course, the less vetted option is a slightly smaller development in terms of density. It's not like it's the other way around, where the vetted one is the less impactful versus potentially more impactful development.
That is accurate as well. And that could be the basis for your reasoning behind voting one way or another on each of these options. But there may be certain individuals who feel, or maybe there may be council members who feel that they cannot apply the criteria to the 4-story building because they don't want to make the assumption that an option that they can't fully see or understand will be less impactful than the 5-story building, although that may be an intuitive sort of decision.
I'll be looking forward to the discussion and logic of council as we approach this matter. With that, those individuals who wish to testify on this, if you'll raise your right hand. Swear or affirm that the testimony you're going to give in this proceeding will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
I do.
Very good. You may proceed.
My name is Elon Salzberg. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this proposal. Formal to give addresses. I can spell my name, Ilan Salzberg. I am part of the ownership group, Brewlab LLC, as well as the developer side, SC&P LLC. John Cianci and I, as developers, have had the opportunity to be involved in Arvada for some time. We finished the Hestra project, bringing a wonderful commercial business over from Golden. Hestra Gloves, which I think a lot of us got the chance to use this past weekend, is a wonderful resident of Golden, some in the mountains and some down in the city. And so that's great. My partner is a working contractor, and we've been involved in West Denver for my professional life. We've owned the site now for nearly 5 years. We came before council, 2015 to have this annexed into the city. We brought this property in from Jeffco and brought it in at that time under CCA. And I'm excited to work with you guys moving forward as the site zoning was updated through the years from CCA to the USU. If you could go to the next slide, I can give you an overview of what we're going to talk about. There's sort of 4 areas that we were going to talk about: location and site plan, the project design, community impact, and focus specifically on the solar study and the impact on our neighbor, the Spanos, who are over in Jefferson County, but are going to be somewhat impacted by our site as a neighbor, and then affordability, which is sort of in our DNA and something fundamental. One thing to mention that in the 5 years since we've owned this project, I've brought about 400 units online, mostly out of state, 400 residential units, and John and I together have added maybe 125,000 feet of commercial space throughout West Denver and Arvada. Our proposal tonight is that council approve residential use to catalyze the Marshall Corridor. The Marshall Corridor is a area in need of some love, need of some attention, and we believe firmly that retail follows rooftops. As Councilman Marriott pointed out, there's a lot of rooftops coming to the area. Very little of that is on Marshall right now. Marshall does not have the benefit that 58th does of a lot of rooftops. And so we feel strongly that retail follows rooftops. We're going to bring the rooftops, and we hope that retail will then follow in our footsteps. And we hope that that residential use is something that you guys see as part of a healthy commercial vibrancy to the larger area, as well as affordable workforce housing. Workforce housing is fundamental. As Lauren brought up, 2-3 years ago when we were brainstorming on this project, we feel like affordability is something that's just vital. And affordability can mean a lot of things. It can mean a formal definition of affordable, or it can mean something not naturally occurring. If we can move forward to the location, if you can move forward to the next slide. The important items in our location, we want to do a thoughtful project at scale. We can do some significant impact here at 52nd and Marshall, add a lot of housing. We're right on work transit corridors, and we're in an area with a lot of commercial jobs, but not a lot of housing. And we need workforce housing in the area. We've seen the demand for that through and through. If we could go to the next page. This gives you the site plan and overview of 52nd and Marshall. The site is blighted at present. It is a rough and tumble workforce site for landscape, for snow removal, and those sorts of things. We are excited, if you go to the next slide, of what we think we can bring to the site. The next site, really in either proposal, gives you this sort of reversed E-shape proposal with about 800 feet of public right-of-way improvements all along 52nd and Marshall. Right now, there isn't a sidewalk to be found. There's no public park to be found. There may be 3 trees, I think. And we're going to be able to bring connectivity and a much more active, vibrant street life where none currently exists. You can see the amount of our public right-of-way improvements we estimate in the 7 digits of what will happen here. This gives you an idea of just what can happen on this site. Again, this site going from an ag use in 2015 to a very lightweight industrial use as we try to position this site for the development we're looking forward to proposing today. If we can move on to the next slide. I want to get into the project design. We've designed what I believe is a very classic design with very nice street appeal. We've faced the site west to capture some gorgeous mountain views, and we've designed it very efficiently to try to really make sure that within the DNA of the project is a workforce target. I keep bringing that up because I think the price point matters here. We want to be able to provide something that is an asset to Arvada and houses people who want to be able to work in Arvada and do the work that you see in the commercial area is all about. We also have designed 2 Arvada parking standards. If we go to the next site picture, you can see the renderings of the site. Well, we're not quite on the level of the 58 and Ralston renderings, but hopefully these give you some feel of what we have going on here. We've got a nice bit of masonry, a lot of west-facing facade. We're capturing mountain views for really the vast majority of these of residents in the building. We're also preserving a lot of open space in those interior eaves, which will be really nice for tenants. What I hope this project does, and it really does face towards the north, is catalyze that retail development that the council people were discussing. It's nice to have somewhere to walk to. Marshall doesn't offer that at present because the numbers aren't there yet. You've got Marshall Liquors, you've got Gargaro's, which deli I love, but we just don't have the humanity on Marshall yet. And we need, again, retail follows rooftops. We can bring the rooftops, and we believe from there, you'll catalyze a lot of walkability heading northbound up Marshall to what can be a really nice walking street. And then to the transit nearby, to light rail nearby, all those things. But again, retail follows rooftops, and we're just not there on retail. If you go to the next slide, you can see the initial renderings of the site. And actually, I think the slide after, the slide after shows the parking and circulation. One important item on this site is we did evaluate the possibility of commercial is transportation engineering. We're near an active intersection at 52nd and Marshall, and the only access points are on the southernmost portion and the easternmost portion of the site. And that's coming from transportation engineering. It's not coming from us. That allows easy fire access. It also makes commercial very challenging in terms of the distance you are from the major intersection. And it makes circulation on site incredibly challenging. That said, it makes pedestrian access very, very doable. And so you can have pedestrians that will feed what I believe will be there's a lot going on Marshall. We're invested up and down on Marshall. We own a commercial building 6 blocks north with an internet startup and some other commercial businesses. And we can really see where commercial will go. And that'll come from, again, I'm repeating myself, which I do too much, but retail follows rooftops. If we go to the next slide, gives you more renderings of what's going on, and we'll keep on moving forward. I'm sorry, move again. This gives you the rest. Want to get into the flexibility because that was a big point of discussion. We've done a massing of 5 stories of 275 units. That takes advantage of the Ytech provisions within the code. We've also done a reduced massing study of 4 stories. We'd like to make, the way that you guys have bifurcated tonight, we'll go through that bifurcation. You guys will look at one and we'll look at the other. The 5 stories has the trade-off where we commit to the Ytech. The 4 stories does not. And we can go to the next slide. This gives you the 4-story look. You'll see it's not a very different site by any means. You just drop it a floor. So instead of having that podium, you drop it down. You still have all the walkability, you still have the western views, you still have the masonry work, really a very similar project. If you go to the next page, you can see the study we've done, which provides the ample parking required per city code. And so we've got very similar throughout. In this, we end up with a little bit of tuck under garages, but other than that, all the access points are the same. Really a very, very identical project to the 5-story site, still focusing on walkability and all of those things. If we go to the next slide, talk about community impact. I'm gonna get off my retail follows rooftops point. I hit that too hard already. We'll talk about the other 2. Sunlight on 2 levels. Sunlight is important on this site from a crime and blight standpoint. We have way too many issues with homeless encampments and other things that come from the surrounding area. We need eyeballs, and those eyeballs are going to come in the form of residents. It'll come in the form of the property management. It'll come in a lot of things. And by investing in this site, the tens of millions of dollars it takes to build and put active people on this site, you're going to see an upscaling of the activity in the area, which will be a benefit throughout. Second, we're going to talk, so that's sunlight as a disinfectant. Sunlight as a wonderful asset. We face the site west, and we have faced the site in such a way that it minimizes impact on our neighbor. Our neighbor is in Jefferson County. They've chosen not to be annexed in. They're Ag 1. Regardless of all that, we have cited our site. If you go to the next slide, we've cited our site, and this may be way too small for anyone to see, but the gray box shows where we could have cited the site. Instead, the lightly colored shows where the site actually is. We could have cited the site 10 feet off the property line and gone 35 feet high and then stepped it up from there. We could have, we chose not to do that. Instead, we have the site 58 feet off the property line, and that's only the kind of the serif on the E or the wing of the E. The vast majority of this site is I'm not seeing it here. Let me go to my slide. So I have my cheat sheet here, but I think it's 130 feet off the property line. 132 feet off the property line. And what we've done, if we go through the slides that follow, is create a solar study that really dramatically lessens or effectively eliminates any meaningful solar impact on our neighbor. So if you go to the next slide does a study of the summer solstice. So this is going to be the largest impact on the neighboring site. I mean, it depends with how the sun works, but the sun is lowest in the sky at 6 p.m. at night. That gray area shows you. So in the late summer evening, at 6 p.m., after 6 p.m., the shadows go forever, right? Because the sun's so low in the sky. But by 6 p.m., you see just that little hair, and you can kind of see that dashed line. Again, these are small pages, and I think you guys have a packet where it's printed a little larger, but you can see just that small little nub of shadow that extends over the property line. And we've accomplished that by moving the site so far forward. So that's summer at 6 p.m. You go to the next slide, that gives you the spring and fall solstices. The spring and fall solstice, the shadow is also very minimal, and it heads a little farther north on the site, mostly barely impacting our neighbor. And then you go to the winter solstice, in the evening on the winter solstice, obviously the sun is super far south, so you get a lot more northern impact. But again, we're barely crossing over into our neighbor's site. And we did that again because we did site this property so far over. As a note, the 5 and 4 story footprints are really identical. You're just 1 story lower. So your impact is effectively the same or less. It didn't move the east-west location of the site. If we go forward to the next slide, affordability. Affordability, again, is part of the DNA of this project. It's part of what the 52nd and Marshall Corridor needs. It's part of what the 52nd and Marshall Corridor can have. There are fundamentally 2 pathways that we see to affordability: subsidy or naturally occurring affordable housing, the NOAHs, as they call it. Subsidy takes other people's money, and there's we don't want to be Scarlett O'Hara and rely on the kindness of strangers, but that is what it's going to take if we go through the path of subsidy and LIHTC. Naturally occurring allows us to control our destiny with a low land cost basis. We bought this property 5+ years ago, and we bring incredible general construction know-how, general contractor know-how, and we can build an efficient design. We believe that's a path to deliver affordability. Going to the next page. LIHTC is a limited resource. This shows from the Chaffa site what LIHTC funds are available. In 2021, they're about 720 million. 2022 is a little lower. If we go to the next slide, Arvada's allocation, and it's hard to see on here, but Arvada's annual allocation is about just under $7 million. Council's not in a position to obviously allocate that, but we'd ask that if there is a LIHTC direction, we would want as much support as we could to succeed in achieving Arvada's allocation. Arvada's allocation of $7 million gets us 1/4 of the way, 1/3 to 1/4 of the way of allocation we would actually need to achieve this project. And so we don't want to achieve a project that we can't deliver. And that becomes a cart horse situation. LIHTC is a preferred path, but we can't control our destiny. We need to win these allocations. It's a deep process, and a 10-minute proposal is nowhere near enough time. We go to the next slide. This is sort of a Chaffa slide to say what happens if demand exceeds supply. What happens is we keep on hunting, and it could take 3 years or longer. You get the allocation for 3 years. So it could take 3 years to pile up the 25 million in order to move forward on the project. We want to move forward fast for Arvada. We go to the next slide. We're proposing a self-reliant path. We believe that CCC will seek LIHTC application. However, we cannot be reliant on decisions beyond our control. And the way this process works, we don't want to put the cart before the horse. Our goal is the delivery of new housing that meets LIHTC affordability with or without using LIHTC funding. And so that's important to us. If we go 5 stories, it'll be through the LIHTC process. If it doesn't, we're going to do our best to maintain attainable housing. If we go to the final slide here, second to final slide. One thing to note, and this is just worthy of note, Ytech requirements, these give you the price points we'd be aiming for. The Ytech price points are $875 to $1,125 at the 50% level, and that would be 20% of the project. And without getting too deep, you're talking about between $875 and $1,125, or between $1,050 and $1,350 as your monthly rental rates. And those are the numbers we'd be shooting for under a Ytech proposal. We saw where the other applicant did an 80%. We'd be open to some sort of 80%, 5% requirements as well. That was just something we didn't really discuss on that. That's something we'd certainly be open to. And this gives you the 80% rent rates are here, $1,400 to $1,600, or is that $1,800 for the range from studios. We go to the final slide, then opening up for questions. We are eager for your support of residential use so we can continue to move forward, and believe that's the best path for this site as we bring the rooftops to bring it back to the poor dead horse that I beat early. If we can bring those rooftops, we believe that retail will follow up and down Marshall. But we got to do the step one before we got to put the cart before the horse. We got to have the cart and the horse, or we're not going anywhere. Thank you, and I'll let you guys beat me up with some questions.
Well, we'll try not to do any beating, but I need to know, first of all, is there anybody else who would like to testify as to this application?
Yes, Pauline Spano.
Spano? Ms. Spano there.
Hello.
Yes, Ms. Spano, if you'll state your name.
Yes, Pauline Spano, 60.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say we live at 6320 West 52nd Avenue. We're east of Elon's proposed building.
Okay. And did you take the oath when I swore people in?
I did.
Thank you. You may proceed.
Well, you know, we do have greenhouses here. No, they're not active right at the moment, but any light hindrance on our greenhouses will impact us when they are active. So I think that that should be taken into consideration. And I realize we're in Jefferson County, but so is Arvada. So I would hope that everyone would consider our points as well as Elon's. And I'm for growth, but I also feel that if it is a hindrance to our property, then, you know, I think that certain things need to be looked at and certainly taken into consideration. I know Elon pointed out that they will all have that view, but his building will also take that view away from me. And I do know that that's not your problem and that's not something that you seem to be concerned about, but it does impact our whole being here. And we've been here for over 75 years. So, I just want as much consideration as Elon's building is going to be given. And that's all I'm asking for.
Thank you, ma'am. If you'll stand by in case there's any questions from council.
Okay.
So moving back to the applicant, do you wish to, first of all, are there any other individuals signed up to speak? Kristen Rush?
No, that's everyone.
Okay, thank you. The applicant will respond to the
Sure.
public testimony.
Yeah, I absolutely respect Pauline's long-standing on the property. I think that's speaks volumes. We did prepare the solar study specifically as to the solar impact on the adjacent property. The greenhouses that she references, again, not in use, but regardless, they are on the southern end of the property, the south and eastern portions of the property. And so as we showed in our study, the only impact that comes anywhere near them is late evening winter after about 4 p.m. So if and when they do reactivate those greenhouses, that solar study that we performed, which you guys have reference to, shows that there really should be no substantive impact on any growing inside those spaces.
Okay, very good. Does that complete your additional testimony?
I believe so.
Okay.
Let me,
since we've got Mrs. Spano on the screen here, I want to ask her a question in terms of her use. Mrs. Spano, how long's it been since you or your families used those greenhouses?
Well, we haven't used them for probably about 10 years, mostly because of hardships. But we made sure that when we rezoned so that we could in fact use them when we had the opportunity to try and get them back up and running again.
Thank you. I'll open it. Does any other council member have questions of Ms. Spano while she's there before I open it up for other questions?
Mark, I did want to ask Ms. Spano, if this building were to be built and you were to open up your greenhouses in the future and found that there was some impact on them, would you be able to overcome that impact by using grow lights or something like that?
I'm sure that you can use grow lights, but nothing is more affordable than to have natural sun coming in. Grow lights are very expensive. And we've had the greenhouses, like I said, for probably, how long the greenhouse has been here?
1957.
Yeah, since 1957. And as I stated, they wouldn't be shut down now, but we've gone through some hardships. So, but we would love to have them open again. And if we have to pay an exorbitant amount of money towards electricity and everything else, then I don't know that we could use our greenhouses again.
Thank you. You've got a question here.
Thank you. Ms. Spano, real quick, thank you for your time this evening with us. In terms of your greenhouses, I have a dual question. What is it that you grow or would like to grow? And then in addition, given that only it looks like based on the solar studies, only a portion is affected to the light by the lights at certain times of day, would it be possible, given what you would potentially grow, to stagger the plants to do the full sun ones where the full sun will be and the partial sun plants where the partial sun would be?
Well, all plants need light. So, no, I don't believe that would be possible. Not in a greenhouse setting.
If I can chime in for a second, that's appropriate.
Yes, you may.
Yeah.
The solar study that we showed that the only impact is after 4 p.m. and in the depth of winter. And so I don't know how much a greenhouse is active in December. Well, I have some background in farming, so I do know, but it would seem to me that greenhouses are not particularly active in December. And if they are, the light after 4 p.m. is not the light that is demonstrably impactful. We showed on our solar study there is absolutely no impact on the existing side of the greenhouses from the spring solstice through the fall solstice. And so we're talking about a limited impact after 4 p.m. in the literal dark of winter. And I love growing plants as much as anyone. It's just in the dark of winter is just not a great time to do it. And we're impacting maybe 10 feet after 4 p.m. in the dark of winter, which is just, again, an incredibly tiny window of time.
Well, our greenhouses are about a third of the way. They start about a third of the way back from our property. And in the winter months, you grow your poinsettias, you have your Christmas trees, you have your bedding plants, not in December, but you start them in January. So your winter months too are just as important as your summer months. In fact, most of your stuff can be out in the summer months, definitely not the winter months. So winter is probably even more important.
Okay, I'll move on to other questions of the applicant. Ms. Miller.
Thank you, Your Honor. Thanks so much for your presentation. I have a couple of questions on the 5-story versus the 4-story. So in your presentation, you said that it's basically exactly the same without 1 story, and that the footprint didn't change. But in the 5-story, you've got parking underneath the building, and in the 4-story, you don't. And so I'm just wondering if you could speak to the differences between the 4-story concept and the 5-story concept.
I'm sorry, midway through your presentation, I got promoted to panelist and it cut out what I think was a really relevant part of what you said. So all I heard was the end of just talking about the differences between the two.
Okay, so in your 5-story plan, you show parking underneath the building.
Yeah.
In the 4-story plan, it's not.
Yeah.
And you said in your presentation that the footprints are pretty much the same in both, and it wouldn't change from the 5-story to the 4-story with the exception of one less floor on the top. So I'm just wondering if you could speak to that 4-story concept a little bit more.
Sure. The east-west footprint is the same. The north-south footprint changes. So the east-west footprint as to the solar impact to the west, no change. But the north-south impact changes. So we end up with more at-grade parking heading south to north. So from what would be like from I-70 or I-76 northbound, you'll see a bit more parking along the street in that plan. And you've dropped 80 units. And by dropping 80 units, you're dropping 115 parking space required. And so that allows us to do not require the podium. We also then slotted a bunch of garages into the building, which then added some efficiency. It also adds a nice amenity for ground floor tenants to have attached parking and covered parking. And so that's where we were able to accomplish both a podium raised 440 unit plan and then drop it a floor and get the, I don't know off the top of my head, close to 300 parking spots.
That's what I was going to ask you next, the parking ratio with
it's the same. It's around the same. And that again needs to be developed with planning. Planning will certainly hold us to it. You know, we've done this with Arvada already, where we went through and delivered, I want to say 33 spots on a very kind of challenging site with a bunch of grade there for Hester gloves. And we'll certainly do the same on this site. And planning will hold us to the parking ratios and the landscaping that are required.
Okay. And my only other question is on affordable housing. You know, the 5-story, you know, we're talking about you think that that's going to move forward with affordable housing, maybe, if you get approved, but you're not sure, cart before the horse. And is that same true for 4-story? I'm just trying to understand the differences, all of the differences.
Sure. The Ytech funding is a long process. And so it's hard to make any commitments on that. I think you guys have seen plenty of Ytech come and go. I think back on one of the first things I ever did as a developer, I took a tour with a realtor who showed me all the projects that never got built. And that always left a big mark in me of wanting to only propose projects that do get built. And I think I've had a pretty good track record, both in Arvada and elsewhere, of actually doing the things I say I'm going to do. And so that's where we need a lot of optionality. We are going to build on this site. We would love, well, I shouldn't say that. Given your approval of us, we will develop this site. I would love to do this as a Ytech project. We simply, like you said, the cart horse. situation. And that's where a 4-story project is something we know we can move forward on. We know we can do it at a workforce attainable type price point, whether that is checks every box of Ytech. I can't tell you that. But I can say that we can do a workforce type project at the 4-story level. We will then be chasing those dollars. We look forward to Arvada's support, and we've been in communications with Arvada and AIDA. Ryan Stachelski, although he's not with AIDA anymore, was instrumental in us bringing Hestra to Arvada, and I think he's passed the torch beautifully to the new leaders of AIDA, and we'll work with Arvada Housing as we seek to succeed in getting those Ytech dollars.
Thank you.
Marriott, you're next.
Thank you. So I have a question for you about our private activity bond allocations. I think you, in your presentation, you had a slide that said, not only do you want the conditional approval for residential here in this particular zoning, but you'd like to have our PAB allocation. So expand on that a little bit for me and help me understand that.
This is one where I would want to bring in a consultant and probably take an hour of your time. The PAB is a deeply complicated structure. The PAB requires, and not to downplay it, it's a lot. You're required in any Ytech project to have 50% come from a PAB allocation. That PAB allocation comes from CHAFA, which then awards cities and municipalities the rights to designate projects that they find valuable. That said, that PAB allocation, Arvada could decide that they wanted to give their PAB to Wheat Ridge. Durango could run out of PAB and say, that guy Elon's so handsome, we're going to give him his PAB, or some PAB. So Arvada has a lot of freedom in how it's going to allocate that PAB. Once that PAB is allocated, it often comes that then other sources, DOLA, Department of Labor, and there's a lot of other buckets that CHAFA can pull from. And so a Arvada allocation shows that there's city commitment to the project, which then shows state and other agencies that they should come on board. And so that's where an Arvada allocation of at least a portion, if not all, of the PAB would be very helpful to see this project come to fruition. But Arvada has to make those decisions. And I don't think it's a council level decision. I don't know the inner workings of how those PAB allocations are made. And that's a whole different conference that I haven't attended.
Okay. Yeah. So that was the question I was going to ask you. You know, my understanding is we allocate all our PAB allocations every year anyway. And I was going to ask you, obviously you're proposing us to allocate our private activity bonds differently than we currently are.
No, I'm not. I'm just, those allocations come in the fall. I'm sorry.
Yes. Yeah. Well, but if we do one thing over another thing, we're choosing one over another. So the question, you know, kind of leads me to the question of so why you for our PAB allocations versus what we're currently doing with them?
I think there's no alternate right now. There'll be PABs that get submitted, or applications for the PAB that get submitted come midsummer. And so I can't speak to the other Ytech applications that are in. I think that we're delivering a really quality project that's at scale, that hits a pretty high number of units, right, that's able to be delivered. We're in a workforce zone where people who get this allocation will be able to really take advantage of it, save a lot of money from transportation. And it's always a NIMBY issue that people don't want affordability. This is an area that it welcomes it. And so I think there's a lot of reasons why this site is a really great site for affordability.
Okay, so let me ask you a different question then. I'm going to give you a hypothetical. Let's say hypothetically you were to receive approval to do either version of your project at whatever you wanted to do tonight. How long are you planning to pursue the Ytech tax credits and the 5-story with the affordability restrictions on it?
Well, we would go through certainly this year and get a temperature. If we and a cart before the horse, but this summer is the PAB from Arvada. There's various deadlines through CHAFA. We went through it last year and they said, you guys just aren't baked enough. So that was our feedback from CHAFA. Now we're hopefully have council approval. We're more baked. If the feedback comes back that says, this is great, but it's going to take you a couple of years to get the funding, then we'll be patient. If the feedback is go fish, then we'll listen. I mean, I think if there's something I'm capable of, it's listening. And so I'd want to be able to be responsive to what I'm hearing out there.
Okay, thank you.
Simpson?
Thank you. So my question actually goes more to our city team for some clarification. So we have two options before us. One is for the affordable housing credit, the PABs that we just discussed at length. And then the second option, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is for what would be a market rate, but still workforce attainable housing, not necessarily quite as cheap as option one, but still aimed more towards your workforce, not your luxury or your upper end. So if we were just hypothetically to approve option one, but not option two, as was recommended by the Planning Commission, what is the timeline for our good developer here to be able to bring option two back around? Like, just curious what we're genuinely looking at here, given the scale that and the differences that we've been looking at between the two versions.
Right. I mean, that's a great question. Let me figure out how to get that answer in an organized way. One thing I want to kind of back up on is the Ytech affordability requirements, and that's why I included that slide, which gives you the idea of what the percentages are. Ytech requires you can have a variety of targets. You can aim for 70% AMI across the entire project, or you can do 40% at 60% or 20% at 50%. So the project could have a large market rate component and then a complementary smaller 20%. So there's a lot of variability there. And that's why I keep saying that we want to bake attainability and workforce affordability into the project at the design level. Because at the end of the day, and this is the unfortunate reality, when you have wood going up 100%, you could give somebody the land for free and it's still hard to make it affordable. And I've seen exactly that. I'm doing a lot of work out of state where the land is free and it still can't be affordable because the construction costs are just that high. And so that's sort of on the first part of your point of what bakes the affordability in. And so I want to make sure that's out there, that what we're trying to do is hit that attainable level. And that's where we're trying to say, hey, residential use is appropriate on this site because we can do all of those things and can serve Arvada with those things. The second part of your question, and forgive me, the 4-story plan to the 5-story plan, we're going to march down the Ytech path, like I said, through summer and fall. And at that point, we'll pull the trigger, listening of which way we've gone. We very well could end up on a 4-story Ytech path. We're not foreclosing that as an option because that could be a cheaper construction path. So we could very well march down the 4-story path and still do Ytech. Our goal is to get going by October of this year. That would be our goal. We have a bunch of landscapers on site. They're wonderful. We like to see them through their season. We'd like to work through with Jake and the rest of the planning staff to where we have an actual plan by October, one way or the other. And that would be our goal.
Okay. And then, sorry, just to quickly follow up to our city team, to Mr. Devon, or maybe Mr. Smetana. Sorry, Rob. Just hypothetically looking at the list, say council approved option one, but not option two, as the Planning Commission did. What is the timeline for a different proposal, for instance, for the 4-story proposal to come back with greater city vetting, since that was the recommendation. What's the timeline for that to be able to come back? Would it be possible for October to still be possible, still be attainable, or is this 2 years, 3 years? What's the genuine timeline we're looking at there?
It's like Jake's getting ready to answer.
I can. Yes, sir. I can answer that.
Come on, Jake.
Hello. Given that we've already looked at the site and we've looked at a lot of the aspects that don't change with the building height, such as access from the public streets, right-of-way dedications, and those types of things, I think we could process a new application, which it would be a significantly different application without a podium and with one less story. So he wouldn't be subject to the kind of year wait that the code requires if somebody gets denied to bring the same project back. And we think we could review it. A lot of it depends on the applicant's turnaround time. But given like that site plan there, I hadn't seen that. So, there's a lot of the documents have already been prepared. So I think we could turn it around and have it back in front of council 90 to 120 days from the actual submittal.
Okay. So 1 year and then 90 to 120 days on top of that.
No, there is no 1 year. The 1 year does not come into play in this. Yes, yeah. So just 90 to 120 days. That assumes, that the applicant could turn around the plans in 2 to 4 weeks. I think that, given that we've already seen a lot of the components of it that aren't going to change, so we could make that pretty reasonable timeline.
Okay. Thanks, Jake.
Yep. You're welcome.
Okay, before we go on, I've got a request that we take a 5-minute comfort break. So we can do that, and then we will reconvene. I want you to know I have something that looks like, well, you can't even see it, but as I drink, I want you to know that this is indeed an A&W Diet Root Beer. So even though it's in my Guinness, though it's in my Guinness glass, it is an A&W. For other questions from council. I'm not, okay, Mr. Pfeiffer, you're next. Sorry, your hand is covering up your logo a little bit, so it's
Yeah,
camouflaged. I'm not hearing you, Mr. Pfeiffer. I'm not showing you as muted, but I'm not hearing you. You're gonna need to speak up a little bit more.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now.
That's weird. It worked all night long. I didn't change anything. So what prevents, so this for the applicant, I mean, you're asking for options here, and actually probably too many options in my eyes, because you have one with your low income, and then you're like at a 5-story, but you may do low income at a 4-story, but you may not do the low income credits with the 4-story. So, I mean, you're asking us to approve all these options. That's what you're asking tonight, right?
I think what we're asking tonight is a residential use. I mean, the way that the zoning code is written, it requests us go to council to see about council's interest on the residential use.
I get the residential use, but the size and the magnitude and the criteria in which I look at things would be weighing on what you end up doing with the property. And you're low income and you're doing 5-story, maybe 4-story, not sure. Maybe I want 3 stories. I don't know where you're going right now, especially hasn't been vetted. So I'm just trying to understand, what are you really asking from us? Do you want a 5-story building or do you want a 4-story building? And are you going to use credit or are you not going to use credit?
So first, let me say what we presented are a 5-story and a 4-story option. So those are the two options. So those are the two use options. In addition, the 5-story option is written in the code through Arvada, gives you a bonus for using low income housing tax credits. We've evaluated a few ways, and it looks as depending on direction, as an efficient construction method to go. Ytech, the PAB allocation is really what's driving the need for optionality. And that's why we're there. We can't go, we have to pick the cart or the horse, and one has to go first. And unfortunately, we aren't baked enough to know if we have a PAB allocation until we have council approval for the use. And that's baked into the Arvada zoning code that asks us to ask council whether or not the use is allowable. And so because of the mechanics of the new code, we can't really come to you saying, hey, we have a PAB allocation for 25 million. Can we do a Ytech project? I'd love to do that. If I could do that, then I could present one question to you, but I can't. So instead, I need to go to you and then to Ytech, and that's a cart horse question.
Oh, but if that's what I want you to do, then that should be the only option we have, right? I mean, you want us to also approve a 4-story without the Ytech option.
Going through the design work and requirement in order to get to a PAB is simply not doable. The code, if the way that Arvada has done it has required to go to the residential use question first. That's just the way the code is written.
Yeah, but you're not getting it. The problem I'm having is your adverse effect to the neighbor. So are you or are you not? Because a 4-story does a lot different in the solar shading than it does in the 5-story.
Not really. And I'm happy to share.
Yeah, it does. I mean, you're talking about 10 to 20 feet, and it gives a little bit more time. of the day. So,
but it's not.
so it is important to me. It is important to me to know what is your choice, because and right now in my criteria review, you're adversely affecting the neighbors. And so I could come through a determination based on the course of action you pick, but I don't know what action you're taking. So if you're doing a low income tax credit, okay, that's interesting for us because we don't have enough of that in the city. And that would be very interesting. And maybe when you look at your balanced approach, maybe that would work. But if you're not going to go after that, then I might not want you to have a 5-story for one. Two, maybe a 4-story works. I don't know, but we haven't vetted through it. So I'm just confused with what's going on tonight. Maybe you're not baked enough for us tonight. I don't know. I'm struggling.
I certainly hear your concern. We came in with the maximum impact, the maximum height. We did those studies around a maximum impact on the adjacent neighbor. So anything smaller would have a lesser impact. And we feel that the 5-story impact on the neighbor is as minimal as is possible under a solar study. The impact would be far greater if we were to build 35 feet at the site. And so again, the residential use is the question. A residential use or commercial use, both could have substantial.
But if you want to keep harping on that, then you've been saying, oh, there's going to be commercial all over Marshall. So why isn't there commercial on this property then? Right? Because you're asking for residential use, right?
Right. Absolutely. Well, I mean, I think that there's two different directions. I mean, I think if you want to see Marshall develop in a commercial way, it needs the kind of rooftops we're bringing. If we want to go a very different path, it sees Marshall go in a way that the planning division has not designed for. Planning is looking for a mixed use commercial corridor on Marshall. That's what we're fitting within.
But you're not proposing mixed use, you're proposing residential.
We're proposing what we believe is a catalyst too. And we believe that we are a pioneer to catalyze that commercial development.
Okay, I don't have any more questions.
I don't see any other questions. Ms. Simpson, you reserve the motion.
Thank you, Mayor. So we're going to start with option 1, and then we'll vote, and then we'll read option 2. Is that correct, Mayor and City Attorney?
Yes, although I would define a little bit what you mean by option 1.
Option 1, yes.
Yes. So option 1 is the application of approval with condition, and that would be with the Ytech credits for the affordable housing. Option 2 would be the 4-story without the Ytech credit condition.
And I don't think you would necessarily need to put a condition on option 1 if we're voting on them as 2 separate options. You can go with, and I know this is confusing because the way that your motions are laid out in the staff report, it has option 1 and option 2. But what I would recommend is doing a motion first for what we consider to be option 1 in terms of the development, the 5-story with the Ytech credits, the more developed proposal. And then a motion on option 2, which is the 4-story building, the less developed proposal.
Okay, so I will wing it slightly as I'm reading the options here. Ms. Morris, please feel free to correct me at any point. I will not take offense. All right, option 1, which is the application of approval with the condition. I move that the conditional use application for Clear Creek Commons, approximately located at the southeast corner of West 52nd Avenue and Marshall Street, be approved with the condition that a 5-story residential project similar to the conceptual drawings presented to the Planning Commission be developed using low-income housing tax credits. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission for the 5-story unit using the Ytech credits.
The only edit that I would do to your motion is just to say that it doesn't necessarily have to be a condition. So if we're voting on the 2 projects separately, so as long as people understand that and you're okay with making a motion for the 5-story building with the Ytech credits, just not indicating that it's a condition of the approval.
But I'm lost on that.
So am I, because I thought the
That's not
5-story
what the
was
planning commission-
absolutely conditioned upon the LIHTC credits.
Right. We don't have to do that if we're voting on two separate ones. So you will approve 5-story building or 4-story building or both. So there's no need for a condition on the approval that limits it to just one.
Wait, but the LIHTC credit is the conditioned use.
Yes,
part of the
I think the 5-story building does not exist without the condition of the LIHTC credit.
That was said in the planning commission.
Well, if I can chime in, a 5-story building by planning requirements has to be LIHTC. It can't not be.
Okay.
Like it's fundamental to the planning language that any 5-story building has to abide by LIHTC. That's already in the planning code.
Yep.
So
it's not allowed without it.
that's like a 5-story building is always a LIHTC building. That's the code, period. There's no way we can't propose a 5-story that's not LIHTC.
Gotcha. Okay. So then I move that the conditional use application for Clear Creek Commons, approximately located at the southeast quarter of West 52nd Avenue and Marshall Street, be approved for a 5-story residential project similar to the conceptual drawings presented to the Planning Commission. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission.
Excellent.
Okay, Mr. Marriott, you're first.
Thank you, Your Honor. I just want to make a comment before I vote. So I will be supporting this motion. I think this area down here is a clever place for this type of development. And I congratulate the applicant for coming up with this idea. I mean, this would be very easy for this to be a self-storage place. It seems to be no lack of demand for that, and it'd be hard to argue wouldn't fit into the area. But I think as our housing needs have grown and we are left with infill development to fulfill those needs, this does provide rooftops that provide both customers for the businesses around 52nd and Wadsworth and that whole Newtown area, as well as businesses that may come along Marshall Street. I think also then for residents who may live here, this is a pretty cool place to live, I would think, because of the access and availability you have of I-70, I-76, Wadsworth, Sheridan, kind of a good place, and in a place that's not really congested with traffic or any of the other issues that we see in other places. And so I think it's very warranted. I think this is a really good example of why we did the MX zoning, not that it had to be residential and commercial, but that it could be either residential and commercial. And I think this parcel is a perfect example of that. So for all those reasons, I will be voting yes. And I want to add one other thing. I think the affordable housing component is something we hear that we need. I think the LIHTC process to get it is difficult, and I appreciate the developer being willing to subject themselves to that to try to get it. And I think this again meets one of the goals we have here in Arvada of more affordable housing. So for all those reasons, I will be voting yes.
Pfeiffer?
I need clarification. So because the planning commission made the motion and recommendation on the conditions that it was the LIHTC was added, we are now deviating from that recommendation, but you're saying that the MXS zoning, if they do the maximum allowed height, they have height bonus for LIHTC. I'm confused on why you're deviating from the recommendation from the planning commission. I'm talking to Rachel.
So the way that Planning Commission, this is the same reasoning the Planning Commission used, except that they did it in one motion. So they're trying to say, as part of their vote and throughout their reasoning in their meeting, that they were concerned that they wanted to approve the 5-story building with the LIHTC because they felt it was the more well-developed option, idea, project. They didn't want to approve the 4-story because it wasn't as developed. To ensure that the developer abided by that intent and that council understood that recommendation, they voted and made it a condition that the developer build the more well-developed 5-story option with LIHTC. Here, we're doing it slightly different in terms of process. we're doing a 2-motion process so that it's very clear where council stands on both those options. So you as council could vote yes on both, you could vote no on both, or you could vote yes on one and no on the other, assuming that you have some distinction based on the criteria between those two, or if you felt that you didn't have the ability to apply the criteria to one project because you didn't have as much information about it. Does that make it a little bit more clear?
No, because I don't understand where the Ytech part comes in, the requirement. Because on the 5, I mean, is it because of the zoning?
The land development code, it's my understanding, I think it has to do with the zoning, or in this district at least, in order to have the 5 stories, you have to have the Ytech. So it's already in the code, and we don't have to put an additional condition because that's already in the code, it's already required.
Okay, so that is part of the MXS zoning.
Yes.
Okay, and so Jake, you concur?
Yes, in the MXS zone district, the height limit is 45 feet.
Yeah.
And the code explicitly says if you use Ytech credits, you can get a 15-foot height bonus, bumping the maximum height to 60 feet, which is what gets them the 5th story.
Okay, so it's on the height. Got it. Okay, thank you. Sorry, I was not on the tour or whatever the meetings were out there, so I needed to catch up on that and why we're deviating. Okay, thank you very much, Mayor.
Okay, any other questions on this? I'll likewise be supporting the motion. I think it's a good project. With regard to the greenhouse property to the east, the fact that it has not been used as a greenhouse for 10 years, that as the property owner testified, there's some economic difficulties. So I don't have a good assurance that will ever be used as a greenhouse again. And the fact that the developer has moved the bulk of the property of the building as far east as possible. And I'm convinced that with the light study that the impact upon a greenhouse operation, if one were to happen in the future, has been minimized to an appropriate level. So for those reasons, I feel that I can support this motion. So I will start with Ms. Miller.
Aye.
Pfeiffer.
Aye.
Ford.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
Yes.
Marriott.
Yes.
Ms. Simpson.
Yes.
And consistent with my prior statement, I will vote yes as well. So that passes 7-0. Let's move on to the second motion.
Thank you, Mayor. All right, option 2, application approval without condition. I move that the conditional use application for Clear Creek Commons, approximately located at the southeast corner of West 52nd Avenue and Marshall Street, be approved without the condition for the 4-story building, and based on the similar to the conceptual drawings presented to the Planning Commission and to City Council. This motion is based on the findings of fact adopted by the Planning Commission. Apologies if I butchered that one, Ms. Morris.
That works. Mr. Marriott.
Thank you, Your Honor. So I'll be voting no on this one. And not because I don't think that a 4-story building here might be appropriate. I think it very well might be. But the proposal of the previous 5-story building with an affordable housing component is very, very different from a 4-story building. While the physicality of the building may be similar, the whether, this whether residential is available on this parcel or not is not absolute. You could picture a parcel that might have one residential unit, a bunch of commercial, and that's a very different approval than a bunch of residential and no commercial or one commercial. So for me, this question is not absolute. It's not saying that I might not be for something like that in the future, but I would want to see a fully developed, vetted plan, I would have some questions, particularly about the parking and whatnot. And I don't see the imposition of if the applicant chooses to not pursue fully the Ytech plan, that the time coming back is not extraordinary for them. And so at this point, I don't see any reason why I would approve two potential different things here at the same time. So I'll be voting no.
Pfeiffer?
Short story. I agree with Mr. Marriott. It is two different products in my eyes because we've been focused so long on trying to get affordable housing. And for the same reasons that Mr. Marriott said, I believe that it is two different projects when you remove that element from it. So for that, I will not be supporting this motion.
Jones.
Yeah, and I'll just put on the record that I have the exact same feelings. I agree with Mr. Marriott and Mr. Pfeiffer, and therefore I will not be voting for this option.
One area of concern, I don't see any other hands as I'm thinking about this. And Mr. Salzberg, you've asked for the right to speak. I will give you that if you've got a point of clarification.
Sure. Well, I'd like to propose an ask as I'm seeing a trend develop. Would it be worth yet a third motion of a Ytech project that is 4 stories? Because that you would need to, based on that conversation we had earlier, you don't have to say the 5-story because it's baked in, but a 4-story Ytech, would that be something that is worth yet a third motion?
What does the attorney think about that?
So my concern here is that council doesn't have enough information about the third proposed idea to actually vote yes or no and apply the criteria to that potential option.
Of course, the applicant, so if a 4-story were approved, he could certainly seek Ytech on it. We're not precluding that.
It would allow us some optionality as we go forward with construction costs and so forth. That way we say, okay, we know we hear you loud and clear. 7-0 is a pretty clear vote to me. I already hear that I'm something to -3. So I get where we're going. Maybe I'm 4-3, maybe I'm not, I don't know. But I wanted to at least propose that path, whatever it is, option 3, where we're going to have a lower impact, but we're 4 stories. And as we go through the CHAFA process, they have comfort that council in Arvada is in favor of it. I would have to imagine you would be if you're in favor of a 5-story.
Mr. Salzberg.
Go ahead.
I just want to interject here and indicate that what I'm hearing from council and the 3 who have voted so far on this motion is, to use your term, the second idea isn't fully baked enough for them to really make a decision on the 4-story option. And so I think that's really, thus far, that's where it's going. And I don't know that it's going to assist us in making a decision by providing a third option that is even less baked.
I'll tell you where I'm struggling on this is that for the approval process through CHAFA and that entire process, if we approve something without a Ytech requirement, I'm concerned that the folks downtown are going to say, we're going to get something, and you've already testified tonight that you're going to give us a product either way that's going to have a more affordable component than what we're typically seeing built in Arvada. And so I'm almost worried that if we approve something without Ytech requirements, that the state folks are going to say, we're going to get what we want without having to dedicate allocations to that. So I struggle with that a little bit.
I haven't seen that be the case, but I mean, I can't speak to what the folks downtown do and don't think. I think the but-for idea, I mean, with the cost of construction, it's simply reality of true affordability at the 50% AMI is not doable without subsidy. A naturally occurring affordable housing where we get to a more attainable place is more doable. But true Ytech housing is just not a thing. And anyone knows at the Chaffa space what that is. But we'd certainly be open, and we could come back to council with, and we could talk about these restrictions we saw where the other developer put a 5%, 80%, and maybe that's something we would need to negotiate through, and I guess that would be a different process.
I'm thinking that it would be, you've got the approval for your primary ask, and if you're saying, well, maybe it needs to be a 4-story, I've got to think that's going to be a fairly quick process for us to do a consideration of that down the road. Ms. Simpson, you're trying to talk, and I'm sure you've got something good to say.
90 to 120 days is what they told us.
Okay. Any other commentary? Seeing none. And then if somebody wants to make a third motion, they certainly can, but I'm not going to require that.
I did not vote on this.
Oh, none of us have voted on it.
Oh, okay.
No, I've just gotten indications of how people are going to vote. Ms. Miller.
No.
Mr. Pfeiffer.
No.
Ms. Ford.
Yes.
Mr. Jones.
No.
Mr. Marriott.
No.
Ms. Simpson.
No, and Mayor, would you allow me a quick comment?
Of course.
Thank you. I want to say that for all the reasons Mr. Marriott laid out earlier, that was why I was in favor of option 1. Indeed, the reasonings Mr. Marriott laid out were the central part of that conversation that Mr. Salzberg and I had 18 months ago about this particular location. And so with option 2, Mr. Salzberg, it is not a no vote against the 4-story building and the work you've already done on that. Rather, it is such a short timetable for you to be able to bring this back before us should those LIHTC credits not be granted. I do not see the tremendous imposition. And so this is more to the mayor's reasoning of us shooting for what we really want. And then if for some reason that doesn't work out with Chaffa or for some other reason, then I believe we can fully bake the second option, get it back here, answer all the final questions, and then bring that true application before the council. That is my logic about why I will vote no on this second amendment. And it is not against the proposal and the work that you've done so far. Thank you.
I'll vote no as well. So that fails on a 6-1 vote. And I can tell you we're dedicated to this project, and so we will certainly assist in every way we can with Chaffa. I've gone down and testified on other projects, and we'll be more than happy to do so on this one as well.
Well, let's fight the good fight together, and while we do that, we'll keep our optionality, and hopefully we don't come back to you, or if we do, we come back to you on a 4-story LIHTC, but if not, then we'll come back to you and do what we can on a 4-story market.
Very good. Sounds like a good plan. Thank you.
Thank you guys for your fighting alongside me.
Good luck to you.
All right. And I want some of that Guinness.
That's diet root beer, honest.
Right. All right. I'm with you.
Okay.
Either way, I want some root beer after this. I'll take either.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Okay, we'll move on to Council Bill 007, an ordinance authorizing the Second Amendment to the 2021 operating and capital budget in the amount of $1,650,000 and authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Arvada and the State of Colorado acting by and through the Department of Transportation pertaining to the signal replacements at West 64th Avenue and Sims Street and West 80th Avenue and Vance Drive, project number 20 TC 401 or 01, CDOT project number SHO M040037. And I'll open the public hearing on that. Mr. Devon.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this intergovernmental agreement will enable a much needed project at two intersections, as you mentioned, West 64th Avenue and Sim Street and West 80th Avenue and Vance Drive in order to proceed. As noted in the financial impact portion of the council report, this funding includes $1,485,000 in federal aid and $165,000 of local match contributions in order to reconstruct the traffic signals and upgrade pedestrian infrastructure at both locations, and also include a slight widening of the northbound approach at West 80th Avenue and Vance Drive to accommodate a right-hand turn lane. I think it's important to note that we worked with CDOT to get additional grant funds and federal assistance in order to address some increased construction costs, and also just to improve the project in general. Our city team is very much recommending approval of this amended ordinance.
Good. Is there any member of the public that wishes to testify on this issue?
There is not.
Thank you very much. I'll close the public comment portion, open it up for city council questions or action.
I'll make a motion if there are no questions.
Fine, you may go ahead.
Thank you, Mayor. I move that CB 21-007, an ordinance authorizing the second amendment of the 2021 operating and capital budget in the amount of $1,650,000, and authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Arvada and the State of Colorado, acting by and through the Department of Transportation, pertaining to the signal replacements at West 64th Avenue and Sim Street and West 80th Avenue and Vance Drive, project number 20-TC-01, CDOT project number SHOM040-037, be approved on final reading, numbered 4754, and ordered published by title only.
Pfeiffer, how do you vote?
Yes.
Ford?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marriott?
Yes.
Ms. Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. Ms. Miller?
Yes.
That passes 7-0. Thank you. We have one last public hearing, and there's only one option on these last two, so I think they're going much easier, and we'll talk about those kind of issues moving forward. Council Bill 21008, an ordinance authorizing the third amendment to the 2021 operating and capital budget in the amount of $450,000, and authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Arvada and the State of Colorado, acting by and through the Department of Transportation, pertaining to the signal replacements at West 58th Avenue and Kipling Parkway. This is project number 20-TC-02, CDOT project number SHOM040-034. Mr. Devon.
Yes, again, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, this is again another collaborative project with CDOT, which includes grant funding. In this case, the funding includes $405,000 in federal assistance and $45,000 of a local match contribution in order to improve the traffic signals at Kipling and West 58th Avenue, as described in the staff report. And again, we are certainly recommending approval of the ordinance.
Russ, is there any public testimony on this item?
There is not.
Okay, Mr. Marriott, you got your hand up first. Mr. Pfeiffer, did you have a question?
I do have some questions, unless, is Marriott, you're going to make the motion?
That's what I was going to do, but you're welcome to have questions and make the motion if you like.
No, I just want to ask the question. You can have the motion. I know that signal seemed to have been replaced or treatment, and I just couldn't find it in the report. I was wondering because it seemed like it was just redone not that long ago. So because I remember there was a lot of people running that light, and I know you're using HSIP funds, so that's safety funds. So, you know, it must be because of the red light accidents that are going there. But I just was trying to just make sure, you know, was there a treatment or was it a replacement of that signal, and maybe why it might have been changing so quickly? Like, why are we doing it so soon? And maybe I don't need that answer to vote, but maybe something you can get to me later.
I believe we could probably provide you an answer very quickly. I see our traffic engineer, Sylvia Lopo, is on, so maybe Sylvia can provide you with that answer.
Yes, Councilmember Pfeiffer. We are requesting actually a full traffic signal rebuild at that location. It does have to do with the amount of crashes that we were having, as you hinted, towards the HSIP funding. The reason that we're doing for a full signal rebuild is that with collaboration with our signal maintenance contractor, Lumen 8, it was determined that the existing infrastructure would not be able to support the added equipment, as well as there was some structural deficiencies in the poles themselves.
Okay, so that was just a treatment that I must have saw done on the signal to make it look new 5-6 years ago. I guess that was the case.
Yes, we do regular like rust mitigation on our poles.
Okay, thank you.
Good. Mr. Marriott?
Yeah, thank you. I move that Council Bill 21-008, an ordinance authorizing the third amendment to the 2021 operating and capital budget in the amount of $450,000 and authorizing an intergovernmental agreement between the City of Arvada and the State of Colorado, acting by and through the Department of Transportation, pertaining to the signal replacements at West 58th Avenue and Kipling Parkway, project number 20-TC-02, CDOT project number SHO M040-034-22278, be approved on final reading, numbered 4755, and ordered published by title only.
Motions for approval. Ms. Ford, how do you vote?
Yes.
Mr. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Marriott?
Yes.
Ms. Simpson?
Yes.
Mayor votes yes. Ms. Miller?
Yes.
Mr. Pfeiffer?
Yes.
Okay, that passes unanimously. That completes our public hearings tonight. Do we have any public comment, Ms. Rush?
We do not.
Okay, reports from City Council. I want to put on the table here this whole discussion of having options and various. I don't think we've done that in the past, and I don't know that I loved it. So I think we need to maybe get some input from everybody in terms of how they feel about it, and in future applications, you know, how we want to address that. So maybe the team can get back to us with some recommendations, and we can have those discussions moving forward. Okay, Ms. Simpson?
Thank you, Mayor. You're right. Granted, I have not been on council as long as the rest of you, but it certainly was new to me, this thing of options. I agree. I prefer it to be clear cut and dry. Tonight was a little unique, I think. I don't think it needs to establish a precedence. Maybe we leave it as a last case scenario for when we have a unique situation such as the one that came before us tonight. But I agree with you that I'm not necessarily a fan. I think it caused a lot of confusion, certainly in terms of the ordinance reading and in terms of just the questions we were asking. So it's better to have a fully baked idea in front of council before we go to vote on it.
Mr. Jones?
Yeah, and when I rose my hand, I actually rose before Ms. Simpson. That's okay, ladies first. But I didn't know if you were asking for feedback from us now, or if we were going to wait for the team to come back for something. I don't want to belabor this any longer than we have to.
Whichever you want to do. If you've got some preliminary comments or thoughts, you know, while it's fresh, that's fine. Or if you've got other issues.
Yeah,
like to talk
no,
about.
again, I agree with what Ms. Simpson said. I don't think it's a fair process for the applicant, because especially in that last one, you know, we're guessing, right? And it's even said out front, it's not a fully baked option. And so why bring a non-fully baked option for the Planning Commission to consider, and especially for us to consider? So again, I'm sure that the staff took copious notes on that process. I hope that we don't ever do that again. That wasn't fun. So.
Oh, it's all fun. Yeah, Mr. Pfeiffer.
Yeah, and I'll agree as well. It's not fun. Plus, I think it for record keeping reasons, it will add some confusion. So, I could see us driving by one day and saying, wow, a 3-story was put there. I don't remember that. And then we have to go through and then find out that we're all, if there was confusion on our motions or, what I'm voting on, I want to be crystal clear what I'm voting on. And so I think we need to watch out for that as well. I just think that just causes more issues for everybody, our constituents, the applicant, and ourselves.
Yeah, I don't put the blame on the team. I think it was more our decision in terms of how we decided to move forward on these. And I'm going to blame Mr. Marriott because I think he's the one who planted the seed on the first one. So
you're exactly right. I deserve the blame for that, and I won't do it again.
And we'll get that in writing. Thank you very much.
Yeah, but out of fairness, it did say options in our guide.
Yes, it did.
So
Yes,
I'm going to
it
defend
did.
Marriott a little bit.
Record so reflects. Are there other topics that council would like to talk about tonight? Not seeing anything. Mr. Devon, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor, members of the council, and please rest assured that I did hear all of you loud and clear with those last comments. What I would want to remind you is that our next meeting is on March 22nd. We will be presenting to you housing strategies and a summary of our 2025 City Council strategic plan actually for 2020, the first year in the strategic plan. We'll be giving you an update on that.
Very good. Ms. Morris, we made you earn your pay tonight. So anything further from you?
Nothing from me, Your Honor.
Okay, very good. Well, good night, everybody. Be safe, and we'll hopefully be back together in person next week unless there's another outbreak or snowstorm or locusts or something. So everybody enjoy the evening. Bye now.
Don't jinx us, Mayor.
Okay, good point. Bye now.